This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate first part of what if Naruto left the village after the 4th Shinobi War. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
When Pain attacked the village of Konoha, destroyed it, and captured its host, Uzumaki Naruto, history was irrevocably altered. Naruto stayed trapped in the Akatsuki's lair, eventually refusing to abandon a missing Sasuke as the village unsuccessfully searched for him and started to rebuild itself under the rule of a new Hokage, Danzo. Naruto made friends with Taka, a member of Sasuke's team, and became used to being with them no matter what. Meanwhile, the masked man gradually revealed more and more about his past and origins, leading to a deadly final confrontation that completely destroyed Pain's faith in Obito. When Kabuto entered the scene, everything fell apart. Nagato spirited Naruto back to his village, where he made him confront the reality that Konoha had changed and that the personification of everything it had once opposed now wore the mantle of the Hokage. He and the Pains engaged in combat, and his relationship with Kurama and the other Biju deepened. Even so, it took him almost giving his life to put an end to the conflict. In a desperate attempt to turn things around, he persuaded Nagato to trust him, which led to his release and Kakashi's recovery. However, there was a price for this. Naruto briefly went back home, claimed Hinata as his own, and then consented to being taken into Konoha's care, further outlining his plans. He later declared his independence and birthright at the Cage Summit, then declared war, causing chaos on their planet and permanently altering it in the aftermath. This is the tale of that aftershock and how he has to overcome the most insurmountable challenges in order to keep everyone safe, including his growing family. Their world was on the verge of anarchy. The five Kage were on the verge of tearing each other's throats out, and Obito would do it if he didn't take the next step. And superior to Obito, in front of the five Kage, he stood uncovered, as son of the fourth Hokage, ambassador of the rain, and host to the greatest tailed beast, and extension of the others, to the Cage of all nations and all those who'd threaten peace or seek to gain the Biju as their own. To Obito and the Cage, he said, his shoulders squared and his feet firmly planted against the table, surrounded by those seated there. The boy closed his eyes. There was still time to prevent this. He still had the chance to save himself. However, he didn't. With a deep settling breath, he put such feckless and fearful thoughts behind him. Come at me and me alone with everything you got, because I declare war on you all. Amidst the torrential chaos, he managed to capture his adversary's lone red eye. That one eye cried out in that 1-second glance, "I'm going to ruin you." He grinned as well. Try it now. Anarchy. As he strode through the dreary corridors of the Intel Division headquarters, Yamato thought this, which had damp, gray tiles that were soiled by a trail of blood and abandoned weapons. A portion of the rain that had suspiciously appeared out of nowhere was able to enter through the broken windows that lined the walls. Anarchy. That rascal is just that, a manifestation of discord. Yamato was well aware of the intruder, and who was responsible for this unusual downpour. A buzzing voice said, "Captain," in his ear. Yamato moved his radio earpiece so he could hear the Anbu member who was speaking more clearly. "What is it?" "We caught him." "What?" he growled, pausing in the middle of a stride. "What do you mean you caught him?" "We caught him planting a device in the fourth quadrant. He's now being confined to room 8.13. Yamato gave a headshake. It was impossible to catch the rascal. Only when he requested it did they manage to get his hands on him. This was clearly some kind of a ruse. He was a hobgoblin with ulterior motives. "Don't let anyone speak with him until I get there." Affirmative. His tongue alone had rendered enough Enbu useless, for heaven's sake. Even as the wind resisted them, the figure darted forward, leaping along the whirling tree branches with unnatural speed in the pelted darkness. And it did, with harsh movements of whipping and lashing. Even by the Hokage's standards, it was unprecedented to move through it all with such fine chakra precision. A crow screeched above them. They were getting close to their goal. The smile escaped through their trousers. At last. Suddenly, as though by the wrath of a god, a flash and a cackle of lightning burst into the sky. The air in front of them was speckled with splintered wood. They cursed as they skidded across the ground. "Not so fast," someone said. Soon after, a figure crouched on a massive branch above and followed the words. The only thing visible through the cloak and darkness was the white of his mask. A person who was Anbu. One who took his profession a little too lightly. Well, came for the strong source of chakra and its intruder, and look who it is. Never thought I'd catch you like this. He didn't have to take off his disguise. It was obvious who he was. Hitaki Kakashi. The recognition made his eyes shine. "We've missed you." The tone became harsh. "Listen, I don't have time for you. No, in a desperate situation, and hazardous. Get out of my way." The smell of paper and concrete hit Yamato as he stepped into A13, Intel's most secure cell. Like room. More than a year had passed since he had used it to question this specific individual. Additionally, unlike the previous time, a large number of Anbu Black Ops members were on guard near the center, where a metal table, a chair, and its cuffed occupant were seated. When Yamato saw the heavily guarded occupant, he wasn't shocked to see the young outlaw observing him with his elbows coolly resting on the metal table and a broad smile on his pale face, despite the silver rings around his wrists. Yamato was taken aback by the numerous deep slashes, defensive marks, that were cut into those arms, as well as the gash on his cheek that crossed, with the scar in the middle. Yamato automatically stared at the wounds when he saw them. The cuts were new and gushing blood, and deep, as though the assailant had hit him furiously. This kind of harm was not comparable to the interrogation methods used by the Anbu or Ibiki. This had been done by someone else. Lately. And if they were able to leave such unpleasant stains on him, this enigmatic person was extremely dangerous. The only sound for a while was the hard rain hammering against the ceiling. Yamato did not sit down, but he did pull an extra chair up to the table. Instead, he simply laid his palms flat on the chilly surface while maintaining eye contact with the captive, whose smile grew. His voice was drawn. "Oh hey, Captain Yamato," he said. "How's it going? Don't put up an act, Naruto, and get your elbows off the table. You're getting blood all over it." Naruto laughed while pretending to be innocent. "It's not mahogany, Cap." Yamato gave an eye roll. "I am no longer your captain. What are you doing here, Uzumaki?" He could wait to inquire about the boy's condition. He hissed defensively, "That's Namikaze, dang it. Namikaze. Uzumaki." Naruto shrugged and asked, "And as for what I'm doing here, I was just missing home. Can't I even visit without?" "You're a rogue. You haven't set foot here in over a year. Instead you've spent it outside, busily building up your little kamikaze reputation." Yamato reached for a folder. The name of Naruto was stamped on the front cover. Incriminating details abound in his personal file. Naruto gave a headshake. When he said, "Again, for one thing, it hasn't been a year, and for another, I ain't a friggin' rogue. Geez. Can't you people get anything right? And last I checked, me and my team's operations are actually helpful. But is that filed in there too?" His eyes narrowed icily, which was in contrast to his popular, "Nah." Yamato refrained from massaging his temple. He's been hanging out with Jinchuriki of the Hachibi once more. "Tell me then, why have you still avoided Konoha even after all this time, Naruto?" He sighed and whispered. "Because Obito wasn't the only one I declared war on. My point exactly, and not only that, but you even dragged others into your mess." Naruto shrugged once more, looking at the door with apparent indifference. He had no choice but to leave at this very moment, regardless of the fact that he was guarded and cuffed to the table. For the escape artist, this dance was now merely a formality and nothing more. However, when the doorknob rattled, his pretended composure was brutally shattered. His breath caught, and he tensed horribly. His hand moved to his thigh from beneath the table, fingers twitching over what was undoubtedly a concealed blade. It was so subtle that anyone who wasn't as enthusiastic as Yamato would have missed it. And Yamato saw genuine fear in him for the first time. Yamato became terrified as a result. Naruto exhaled deeply in relief when he realized the intruder was Ibiki, then covered up his earlier nervousness with a silly smile. "Man, Ibiki, just you. There's a problem here. Totally incorrect." With a laugh, the head of interrogation sat down in the chair Yamato had set up across from the Jinchuriki. He started looking through Naruto's file, asking, "Just me, kid? What am I? A cuddly plushie? This has gotten fuller since last I went through it?" So, Ibiki was definitely not someone to unwind with. An enormous brute in height and bulk. In addition, the scars on his face served as a reminder that he had not survived the journey to the head of Konoha's interrogation unit. Even though he was someone to be feared, Naruto felt totally comfortable around him, as if he were a regular person and not the one who could make this night extremely restless. However, it was already said that Naruto suffered from insomnia and had some evil foes who made Ibiki seem like a baby. No, Yamato thought, that wasn't correct. Ibiki was made to appear like a devoted grandmother by Naruto's adversaries. However, he had never been so genuinely terrified as he just was. "Sorry I'm late. I was checking the perimeter. No sign of his team. Namikaze's actually here alone," Ibiki said, his smile turning serious as he closed the file and turned to Yamato. Naruto's smile was fake and broad as he laughed. "I could have told you that, buddy." Yamato nodded, ignoring him, and Ibiki leaned forward to examine Naruto intently while casually making some notes on his own file. "So solo this time, huh?" "Yup. It's been a while. Yeah, so where's my welcome party? I want Ichiraku. Super sized, if you don't mind. Ibiki laughed. Same drill, kid. Clear some things up and I'll consider it. Heck, I'll even treat you myself, 2 servings. With a sly smile, Naruto placed his feet on the table. He laughed and pushed the chair back a little. Tempting. But it's either 3 at least or it's nothing. Ibiki smiled. Very well. Yamato cleared his throat after the introductions were finished. Naruto, no games this time. What do you really want here? Naruto let out a sigh and looked around the room for a while before focusing on Yamato with a bored expression. This is it in a nutshell. I want any files Konoha has originating from Uzushiogakure or filed from my mother, Uzumaki Kushina. I need them. There wasn't even a flicker in his chakra, which is a dead giveaway that a shinobi is dishonest. Normal heartbeat. And no trace of his pitiful poker face attempt. Both the captain and the head of Intel took note of this, with the latter recording it. Yamato's forehead lifted. Why now? Should be obvious. Before being butchered, they were the most elite sealers. I need to find a certain seal, to find one that has the power to. Well, to do something for me. Yamato surmised, you want to free the Kyuubi. Naruto blinked. Wow, you're pretty good, Cap. Wow, how'd ya? Tell me why, yelled Yamato. As much as his handcuffs would permit, he raised his hands in surrender. Yeesh, okay. So I just wanted, okay. And preferably one that doesn't kill me in the process. I've literally searched the world for any method that could separate us, but no luck, man. But even so, I promised Kurama his freedom. And I don't mean to sound selfish, but I don't want it come at the expense of my life, you know. Ibiki asked, again, Naruto. Why now? This time. Naruto stated, all you need to know is that I need it, now run and get it and I'll be on my way. That isn't how this works, Naruto. Despite their unpleasant encounter, which took place in the same room, Ibiki had a soft spot for the child. He had always done so. He was impressed by his silence. At least with knowledge. He outshone the babbling of Brooks with anything else. To the extent of being bothersome. Specifically, prior to the crystal incident. Then. Even if we had such secrete scrolls, why would we turn them to you? Replied Yamato. After glancing around the room, Naruto said cautiously, I was hoping, since you owe me one, you'd. I don't owe you anything. With a furious look on his face, he leaned forward and lowered his feet once more. Naruto insisted, when you were captured, who was it that got to you first, Captain? Your precious Hokage, or the prisoner you were ordered to bind with that wood jutsu of yours? I mean, we're supposed to be a friggin' team, Captain. Yamato refused to acknowledge the slightest hint of guilt that threatened to come to the surface as he looked down. To emphasize his point, he ran a finger down his arm, ignoring the red stain he had applied to his skin. I risked my life, everything, going back there for you, and I got scars for it. This one I got while freeing you from his jutsu. And this? Another wound. There was nothing more to say. He sighed, his words and facial expressions entirely sincere, even regretful. I'm sorry, Naruto, I really am, he said. But the day you were taken Team 7 was no more. And just because you two are back, that doesn't mean the consequences can just be reversed like that. And I never asked you to make such a risky move for me, and it was a risky move on your part. A terribly stupid one. But I did it, and helping me now is the least you can do. Naruto, he uttered gradually. Even if we had such scrolls, you would have already stolen them like you have every other one from the classified archives. I don't steal. I borrow. There's a huge freaking difference. Please. He started to reach for his wrist and said, and here, take them back, well except the documents on my birth. I still need to fix them. And Anbugard gasped and hurried over to him, threateningly pointing a spear at his throat. Nice try, host. Naruto stopped and cast a frustrated glance at the wall. Captain Yamato, you need to get your men under control. Yamato gave an eye roll. Pull back. His guard grudgingly followed his instructions, and Naruto completed his task by removing a stack of scrolls from the sealed band that was fastened around his left arm, just like Sasuke's. The only purpose of the bandages covering his right side was to conceal the skin there. See? No shuriken. Just scrolls. The Anbu laughed. Reaching for one of the parchments, Yamato looked at it. He almost stammered as he read the description label, W. What? Even I don't have the clearance to read these. How did you? Naruto pursed his lips. Once more, Anbu hurried over to strike him in the back of the head. Really? I don't see what the big deal is. That one was just some tedious report on, they said. You will not speak of its classified contents. Ow. That hurt, Naruto grumbled. You do or don't want me to talk? Make up your mind, dude. The host would be wise to remember we are bound by obligations and protocol, and unlike him we won't break them. Naruto turned to face a wall, mounted clock, and said, "Your problem, not mine." He was clearly counting the numbers on the clock. "Hey Yamato, ya got them or not?" At last, Ibiki was at his breaking point. He said, "That's 3 times you've looked at the clock," which caused Naruto to wince. "Got something planned for the evening?" Naruto tapped his fingers on the table to recover. "Nah, it's getting pretty dark out pretty early, you know. Seasons changing and Konoha always looks amazing around Twill. True, the warm colors are a sight to admire, but there's no window in here." Naruto cursed, but he got over it fast. "I think it's dinner time. Clock says so and I'm famished. Where's my ramen?" Ibiki grinned. "I don't think so." Naruto snarled. He was Ibiki's. "Really, why come here first, unless you needed such scrolls now? Someone's chasing you. That's why you're insistent on you and the Kyuubi being separated as fast as possible. Someone is forcing your hand." Yamato felt the uneasiness rising again. He gave Ibiki a nod. The interrogator may assume control. "In an effort to play this game correctly," Naruto said, "who says I'm being chased?" With an expressionless face. "That's an awful big leap for you to take." Ibiki leaned forward once more and thoughtfully rubbed his chin with his fingers. "Well, since up until now you've had no such desire of freeing the Kyuubi yourself made known to us, the village who would want to contain it. I'm assuming there's a new player on the field, one who wasn't there before. One who's good. Very good. Enough to hit you, which explains the cuts on you. You were just in a fight, weren't you?" Naruto remained silent. He simply drew down the sleeves of his dark military shirt. "Again, you're making assumptions, Biki.man. I got these. Sparring. You know how Sasuke is." Ibiki laughed. "It's amazing you two've lasted on the same team this long, with your highly conflicting views on justice." "Yeah, it's actually that we fought over just a few hours ago. When he found out Danzo was somehow still alive, man, he was ticked." The room's Anbu tensed up. Whether Naruto is on board or not, he will undoubtedly return to try to complete the task. Ibiki grinned inside. "You're mixing truth with lies, Naruto. A clever new tactic, but one I already know about." Naruto flinched once more. "What, we really did fight recently, and that's exactly the reason I'm alone right now. Trying to hide a lie by covering it up with a true account, truly a way to get past lie detection. But here's the thing, Naruto. I'm not an amateur. It's a tactic famous in the Sound where it's my understanding you stayed for a few weeks after the summit. And not to mention." He raised his voice to emphasize this. While younger Naruto would have writhed, the 18-year-old Naruto simply shifted, saying, "Your awful poker face is back. So. And then there's the things I can see, Naruto. Those cuts on you? Someone was going at you with the intent to seriously injure, only missing your arteries by millimeters. That's either insane luck or extreme precision. Also, those type of cuts don't match Sasuke weapon preferences. Perhaps a wide weapon? Definitely not the common blade." Naruto remained silent. "Then there's the state of your clothes. Hold on a second," Yamato thought, glancing more closely at the young man. "The dirt covering him is the same as the soil found in the west. Way to the west." Ibiki had previously deduced its meaning, color, and consistency. "Here's what I think. You were in a fight recently, but not with Sasuke. No, this was with someone else, far away. Why else would you have rushed here from such a great distance? The soil on you, it doesn't originate from the land of fire. Ours is a big land, and you would have had plenty of time to wrap up those cuts of yours getting here from where that soil originates." Naruto sighed and closed his eyes. He had become very reckless. "Therefore, you were chased, and so panicked you were that you didn't give yourself time to report back to your base and recover, or even to update your team, which explains why you're here alone. Instead, you came here first. Why? I would love to know, but for whatever purpose you let yourself be captured with the intent to find out the whereabouts of these scrolls you assume we have, the ones you claim could have the power to separate you and the Kyuubi." Understanding the essence of the situation, Yamato muttered, somewhat regretfully, "Meaning they didn't kill you because they're after Kurama." Ibiki gave a nod. "And by your rush, this new guy wants him now." Naruto's face darkened as he nodded. "Well, I always was a bad liar. I'll admit that you're right. I screwed up bad, Naruto slid his fingers across his forehead, clearly not wanting to continue his story, and the ensuing silence in the room felt oppressive. "What happened, Naruto? Who hurt you?" He gave a headshake. "Naruto," said Ibiki. "We already know this much, now we need to know who is the new player. The faster you get on with it, The faster something can happen and we both get what we want. Dilly-dally. And we'll have to resort to other methods. Even though Naruto's fingers froze, his face did not change in response to Ibiki's threat. Ibiki gave a headshake. We both know such methods will only be a waste of time and energy. I don't want more sessions like last year's. With a mumble, it was supposed to have ended, it should have, I mean we were so close to the finish but, I couldn't stop it from happening, I couldn't. Ibiki and Yamato looked at each other. There was a long pause before Yamato finally said it, is it the fourth? After a prolonged awkward silence, Naruto shifted, bowing his head, no. Who? Just tell us and we can help you, and get you bandaged up. You have serious wounds that need proper attention, Yamato said, changing strategies. It wouldn't be any more effective to scare him than to torture him. We'll help, Naruto. Just talk to us. Naruto opened his eyes and let out a slow exhale. No. Why? Give us a good reason. This is my battle, mine and Kurama's. Yamato was unable to summon the courage to say, you can't keep trying to be the shield to the world, Naruto. Especially now that you're a. He simply stood there with his mouth open, then swiftly closed it, leaving his sentence unfinished. The Anbu and Ibiki looked at him incredulously. Captain Yamato? Naruto gave a small laugh. Guess I couldn't keep that in the dark from my captain. Yes. And you can't keep hiding. I'll tell you what I told Kakashi. Sensei. You have no room to lecture me on what's left behind for safety's sake. You sound like you're still trying to convince yourself of that, Naruto. Naruto nodded and let out a long sigh. Honestly, I am. This was never what I wanted. It was just the only way, but still, at the heart of it all I've ever wanted is a home. To go there. But I can't. At least, not right now. This was so depressing that it wasn't even funny. You're the one who stopped that from happening. You really need to stop and think about this path you put yourself. You are not the only one it's affecting. I am, Captain Yamato. I am. Yamato felt a shiver run down her spine at the eerie gravity of his expression and tone. The cuffs clattered to the floor before he had even registered it. Yamato swore. They would lose him once more. Wait, Naruto, however, he moved quickly, sweeping beneath the closest Anbu's spear. He knocked the wind out of the man with a forceful thrust of his palm into his chest without making a sound. Yamato rushed forward and grabbed the man by his dominant wrist in one motion before he even touched the ground and more could be removed, which Naruto would do very rapidly. Stop it. Ibiki was standing as well, clinging to Naruto's other arm and tipping his chair over. With a menacing boom, he said, you're not escaping again. Naruto twisted back and hissed. Yamato came to the realization that Naruto would not take the chance of being captured. Neither Konoha nor this new foe. Yamato quickly snapped his wood jutsu and pushed Naruto against the wall, binding him there without a second's hesitation. With only a few seconds to spare, his fingers worked swiftly to remove the bandages until Naruto's wrist skin was visible. And nude. Yamato tightened his jaw as Ibiki cursed. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto slipped out of Yamato's hair and stepped back, lowering the long black sleeve. I'd appreciate if you never did that again, he said. I like to keep that covered. A severe glare and an abrupt seizure stopped the remaining Anbu from moving. Naruto was behind him in less than a second, his arm around their neck. Listen carefully, Anbu. I'm done here. Oh, and Cap. Yamato swallowed, frozen in place by Naruto's abrupt, severe change in attitude. Yes? I had naturally assumed you guys would have the scrolls and would lead me to the correct ones, but I wasn't completely sure, so there are bombs scattered around different points of the village as a contingency plan, located right where the confidential archives are. So unless you want the rest of the Hokage's dirty secrets in the wrong hands, I would go find them. Pronto. Yamato tightened his jaw. All Naruto needed to do was pick up bombing from the Akatsuki. He pushed his hostage down and released him, saying, and if you come after me, I'll detonate them. And he was gone in an instant. Anbu, one of the others, stirred. Sir, what was on his arm? No, the Jinchuriki, he's... Ibiki let out a sigh. Don't fret over it, it was just a shadow clone. A shadow clone? How do you know for sure, sir? Ibiki gave a headshake. Can't say. Medical confidentiality. But he's a criminal. At the time of his initial medical and psychological examination, he was just a recovering abductee. The files were updated by none other than by Miss Haruno herself. But she's... He gave the man an accusing glare and said, not important. What is that he's gone. He shouldn't have been able to teleport. Was he not injected beforehand? He was, sir, witnessed it myself. Yamato gave his temple a rub. He must have bribed the medic to switch the drug when we weren't looking. Ibiki sighed, wouldn't be the first time. In any case, Captain, you know him better than I do. Should I send ambush squads after him first? He'll still be in the village, most likely at the Hyuga estate. Yamato gave a headshake. Don't bother. The real one probably got to her hours ago and is long gone. Just find those bombs. They won't be in the proximity of any civilian. That goes against his moral code. But still, find them. Abruptly, an Anbu rushed into the room, slamming the door behind him into the wall. Captain, we have a triple S threat. It appears that Naruto's demon followed him all the way to the village. There was a crow screeching to the south. A man with dark hair stopped in his tracks. A presence unlike any other loomed somewhere near the shriek of that bird, not far from his target. Anbu was running around in vain as the once calm village was being overtaken by muddled shadows, seeking a lone individual. At least they wouldn't discover him in time. And they would get in his way. His lips formed the first shape of the syllable that would soon spell out a dangerous and common jutsu to destroy them, Kaden. As his fingers danced into movement, weaving seals. He never got it done. A change in chakra. Target shifted, vanishing once more into the darkness. Hours ago, was only slightly incorrect, well, a couple of minutes. When Hinata felt it, she froze in her tracks. Just behind the shoji door in front of her, a powerful presence was moving closer. She briefly caught a glimpse of its shadow flickering through the blue, tinted paper. She put her fingers on the end of its wooden frame and swallowed. No response. She only returned with a powerful blood odor that was getting stronger by the moment. She was overcome with fear. The only people who should be at the estate this late are Hyugas, and whoever was inside was neither one of them nor her guardian. After concentrating her chakra, she said, Byakugan. Her field of vision immediately shifted to the next room in X.ray vision, where she could make out light blue lines from a man's chakra veins. Its pattern was not entirely clear to her. It appeared intermittent and potent, strange but familiar. Still, it's a threat, she muttered, a zetsu, as her eyes narrowed. She raised her hands in an offensive position and squared her shoulders in preparation. Suddenly, however, the intruder appeared behind her, grabbed her wrist, and she screamed in surprise. How quickly! The villain clamped cold fingers over her mouth and hissed, shish. Hitaki Kakashi. The recognition lit up her sensei's eyes. We've missed you. Sakura, dear. Leaving like you did wasn't very polite, or even like you for that matter. He stared at her, anticipating a response, and undoubtedly admiring her battered look. Her clothes and fists were covered in blood, and her longer hair was tangled but restrained by a thin cord to try to control the light strands. Listen, I don't have time for you. Sakura swatted her hand in protest. She began running again, trying to get past his block. He released her, letting her push past the locals and enter through their village. Since tourists were less common these days and didn't want to go out this late at night, it wasn't a huge deal to get past them all. However, Kakashi became immediately suspicious when he noticed that several of the people outside, including the guards at Konoha's gates, were unconscious. He thus kept up his close pursuit of her. When it became apparent that he would not leave her alone until he received an explanation, her expression turned frantic. She yelled, "Get out of my way!" He was sorry that he had lost his Sharingan, and she turned quickly to try to get rid of him. The Anbu, however, should not be taken lightly. He sprang to his feet and sprang down, swinging himself across a light pole, directly in front of her, to the closest building, an apartment complex. She wasn't even put off by this as she might have been in the past. He pushed his chakra almost to its breaking point in an attempt to match her chakra. Boosted speed, asking, "What's the rush?" She jumped over a wall and yelled, "Naruto's in trouble." He pushed himself up after her in a hurry. What happened? Where is he now? There's no time to explain, but he's in serious need of medical attention. And he disappeared before any of us could do anything. Kakashi sighed as he realized that he was alone. Where is he now? Kakashi nearly swore when he heard the words, issuing a code black, and he's not going to stop until he reaches her. She's in danger. He didn't have to inquire about she's identity. The Hyuga heiress had previously been attacked in her own house. She swung the attacker over her shoulder by using his own momentum against him. With his arm painfully clutched in her pale fingers, he slammed backward into the ground. Her Byakugan informed her that she had not heard a crack. She allowed her Byakugan vision to slightly deteriorate so she could recognize the intruder by his outward appearance. When she took in the sight of the short blonde hair and the fiery blue eyes that would have filled her with euphoria on any other night, she didn't gasp. She wasn't going to be duped by the Zedu's transformation into Naruto again. Ignoring the groan that matched Naruto's sound exactly, she tightened her bone, cracking grip and demanded, "Who sent you this time, huh?" No, neither his appearance nor his noises would fool her. Never again. Kabuto? It's me, Hinata. He moaned, writhing beneath each of her. She hissed as she swung her palm in the direction of the Zetsu's chakra center, ready to use her gentle fist style to render it incapacitated. The fake twisted free with incredible strength at the last second, whipping his arm free as he realized what she was trying to do. Exclaiming, "It's me!" the Zetsu leapt to his feet and blocked her counterattack. She was confused for a moment before realizing that they must be trying to capture her alive when he lunged for her arms. She swung her feet towards his, tripping him, but it was not going to happen, dead or alive. And he went down, stumbling awkwardly. It was evident from her wager that this was not his first fight of the evening. To reach her, this Zetsu must have battled her neighbors and the Hyuga guards. He was exhausted and sloppy as a result. Now, however, the Zetsu's predicament was over. He was unable to overcome her. Gentle step. Twin lion fists. The room was filled with purple, flickering blue chakra from the power of her chakra. The Zetsu's chakra swelled as it was drawn into hers, and he smashed through the screen doors, tearing through them and into the next room. He bounced back up quickly, using the momentum to leap at her. His hands gripped her wrists as they collided with a dresser. She moaned as she struggled to break free of his tight hold. Despite her difficulties, he repeated, "Shush, keep it down, it's me, Hinata, stop it. Let go of me." Unbeknownst to her, his grip briefly relaxed, which was all she needed to break free and deliver a gentle fist to his chest. He fell back hissing. She wasn't finished, though, as her hands swiftly moved up each and every one of his Tenketsu chakra points, crippling and sealing them off. She yelled, "You're not getting him," as she fell on him. With her knees locked around his sides and her hands holding his wrists down in opposite directions, she quickly placed herself on top of his sternum while panting. He was gasping as well, his flaming blue eyes fixed on her. His face was dripping with sweat. This was the initial indication that there was something strange about this Zetsu. Zetsu resembled humans in appearance, but they did not sweat or produce any other bodily fluids, such as blood. And there was sweat and blood on this one. Feeling doubt start to bite her, she told herself that if he wasn't a Zetsu, then he was a ninja employing a transformation technique. She gripped him tighter, gritting her teeth. "Who are you?" "Hinata." He sounded off. "It's me. I swear it is, the real deal." Her heart stopped in its tracks as she gazed down at him, and he looked her in the eyes, his chest rising and falling rapidly as his body warmed beneath her. "It's me, okay." He wasn't resisting or battling her grip, but it might all be a ploy to win her confidence. To deceive and harm her once more. With her hands on his arms nearly shaking, she whispered, "How am I supposed to know for sure?" She desperately wanted it to be true so she could be sure that her gut instinct was correct, but if it wasn't? The cat. She blinked. "I'm the only one besides you who knows our code." Her mouth quivered. "The 13th. Some say cat, but me, personally, relate to the fox. Take your pick. I'm also one of the few who know what you're fighting so hard to protect. That's a couple of rooms down. He's about 3 months old now, isn't he?" He. Her eyes began to well up with tears. 3 months, 5 days. He gave her a gentle smile that only her Naruto-kun could have. Sounds right. She broke down in tears, hopelessly. "Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were the enemy. I can't believe I just..." He grimaced as he nodded. "Yup. And for the record, I didn't just get my butt kicked by a girl. This totally did not just happen." She laughed, letting all of her tension melt into sheer joy, and then, too elated to put into words how relieved and blissful she felt, she collapsed into him. She was, disregarding the fact that they were both sweating and out of breath from the altercation. At last, they were reunited. It's finished. As she lay on top of him, he grinned and started kissing her, bringing his lips from her cheek to her mouth. Clinging to her as though she would vanish if he didn't, he pressed into her desperately. 1 year seemed like a long time, particularly for him. She shifted and leaned up a little uncomfortably. "Not that I don't mind this position, but I'd like to be able to move, honey," he teased, his smile still intact. She jumped off with a yelp as blood rushed to her cheeks. "Oh, I'm so sorry." She blushed more as he laughed at her embarrassment and said, "There's nothing to be sorry about." Then he raised an eyebrow and said, "And what'd you do to your hair? It's short." She touched the ends of her hair and giggled. It was cut shoulder length for her. "I got tired of it getting pulled." He squinted his eyes. He doesn't know any better, and I didn't always remember to tuck or tie it back." "Oh." Sobering up, he tried to sit up but eventually failed, groaning as he fell back to the floorboards. "Man. You Hyugas and your gentle fists are no joke. And I'm guessing you've trained with Sakura, too." She muttered, "I'm sorry," and positioned herself next to him. "She's been a great help with her medical knowledge." "She is," he concurred. She then started to reopen his pressure points and chakra. Despite his grimace, he managed to survive the process quite well. He sat up when it was done and gave her a firm hug. He seemed unwilling to let her go. He was shaking, shaking, shaking. And it was painful. He whispered into her shoulder, "I'm so sorry it's been so long," as his aroma filled the air. With an expression of regret on his face, he withdrew, saying, "You're more on edge than I've ever known you to be. You've been attacked by someone in my form?" She gave a nod. Repeatedly, "But I should have known it was you." He nodded grimly. "Hinata, I would never hurt you, ever." Her expression lowered, unable to express her emotions aloud, at least not physically, however. "Though, why is the Kyuubi, I mean Kurama's chakra dammed up?" she asked, nevertheless. As he dropped to his knees to get ready to stand, his face took on a sorrowful expression. "My attempt at extra protection. Don't really know what else I can do right now." She held out her hand to him and asked hopefully, "But it's over now, isn't it?" Grabbing it, he was able to stand again with her assistance. "You're home. After all this time. And oh my gosh, you're hurt." The visible cuts lining the intruder's body greatly alarmed her now that she knew he was not a Zetsu. His limbs and clothing were in even worse condition, and his face had nicks that were obscured by a layer of dirt. His hand, which she held, was also covered in blood. Where exactly had he come from in this state? He pulled his hand back and rolled his eyes. "It's fine. I'll have my medic patch me up later. Right now we've got more important things to take care of." Bitterly, she peered down. "It's not over, is it?" His head was buried in her shoulder. "I'm sorry, but it's not. It's a code black. I've already made sure that Nagato and Conan went into hiding. The Biju statue. Not even in this dimension. I think. Now there's just you and him left to take care of." Her heart ceased to beat. "But," he wrapped his fingers around her face and lifted it. "You are the only thing they would need to undo everything I've spent a year fighting for. We can't afford that risk." She objected, "But I've protected myself thus far. What could be worse that we wouldn't be able to handle?" He only continued discussing his safe house plan without responding to her query. "You have to get away from any village with a shinobi force. Just stay away from them. Find one that's either too small to be known, or as off the grid as you can get." He then grumbled, completely separating himself from her, and from me. Especially me. "Get rid of any connection, allow no recognition, and above all, keep him and yourself safe." "But I'm just now seeing you again. I just can't up and leave the estate, what about?" A tiny, high-pitched voice started sobbing from the adjacent room. Eyes wide, Naruto froze. Express a mixture of pure joy and sadness. "That's..." She gave a nod. "Our baby. It figures he's up, it's about his feeding time." Her bedroom, complete with toys, tissues, and a crib, was behind the next shoji door. Her room was no longer dominated by the icy hues of the Hyuga, which were once bleak grays, whites, and lonely blues. It had been altered to warmer, friendlier hues in recent months, making it ideal for the ideal child. A child for whom she would stop at nothing. A sound came from behind them as Naruto extended his hand, seemingly to enter their son's room. Both of them turned to see a Hyuga man with dark hair and white eyes, dressed traditionally. Even today, it remains a prevalent and dominant characteristic. Ko, her devoted protector. Ko said, "Hinata." Sama, with hesitation. "I thought I had heard some noise. I wasn't aware you had a guest." He and Naruto exchanged a quick glance, the father looking a little weary of the other man reaching for his son, and the older man unsure of how to react to the blonde's unexpected appearance. "This is Ko," she informed them. "Remember him? He's been helping with the baby. Besides my immediate family, father and Neji, he is the only Hyuga who knows about him. Outside the family, only Kurenai and Sakura know of his existence. They've all helped me so much, protecting him from the uppers of the village and Hyuga. And from Obito's attacks." She didn't say this aloud for fear of alarming Naruto even more, but he had also been a huge help to her, talking to her and offering support when the nights became difficult or stressful. They did a great deal together before and after her son was born. Naruto gave a nod. "It's safer this way, or at least until the war's over and I can have some words with the elders about it." Obito was not an issue anymore. There were others. He looked at Ko. "You have my thanks." Ko gave a nod. The band over his forehead felt much heavier when he said, "And thank you for allowing me to see the first freed child. It's been a privilege." Light blonde hair emerged from the elder man's arms, surrounded by a swaddle of saffron threads, and an almost melodic "goo" followed. Naruto grinned and took a sharp breath, taking in the sound. His hands were hanging in midair when he stopped reaching for his boy, longing to finally hold him in his arms. Tears of crimson trickled down them. Hinata pulled Naruto's hand gently. "Ko, can you please get the first aid kit and lay him in his bouncer? I'll feed him in a moment." The Hyuga bowed. "Yes, Hinata. Sama." The couple was left alone when the man and the child vanished into the hallway. The room was illuminated by a thunderclap outside, and Naruto froze for a moment before laughing. "Made me jump. Certainly a night out, isn't it?" It was a fake grin. Additionally, he appeared paler than he had just a moment before. Looking him in the eyes, she questioned, "What has you so spooked? Tell me." Surprisingly, he responded shortly after, I can't bear the thought of losing anyone else. I'm not going anywhere. And you know this, so why code black? What could possibly get worse that I would need to go into hiding for?" She was chilled by Naruto's subsequent expression as he gazed at her with a sense of near despair. There was a serious problem. However, he dismissed it once more. "What's his name?" followed by a sour chuckle. "It's pathetic I have to even ask. It's just, you've never mentioned it so." Her smile was grim. "I wanted you to be here to name him." Naruto hesitated, then burst out laughing. "What in the world do I name him, after a Hyuga? My Hokage father? Whatever I call him, he'll live with for the rest of his life." She agreed and hummed. "You should get to know him first, then. He's such a sweetheart. Lively, precious. He's my honey." "But," she continued, "he needs his father, and I'm my husband." "I know," he faintly said. "I want to stay with you, and I want you to stay here, but this ain't like when I was a kid, and until it's over I'm just endangering you and him, and if something happened to either of you I would never forgive myself. Hinata. It would break me." "But we," Ko yelled as the most dreadful presence filled the air, and the room then dropped a few degrees. Suddenly, there was a loud crash sound, as though the house itself had been torn apart. Their honey began yelling bloody murder somewhere in it. Behind her, he growled, "It's already too late." She screamed, "The baby," and started to run, but Naruto's absence caused her to stop. She turned around, her eyes wide, and saw him drawing out a thick, ancient-looking scroll. Blood flicked from his fingers as he thrust his hands on it, glowing with chakra. She exclaimed, "What are you doing? I'm so sorry for what I'm about to do, but I have to contain what I can, or a lot more people are going to die." The Hyuga estate was drawing rapidly closer. The great estate was mostly pitch black at this late hour, but a few Hyuga forms were visible close to lanterns and lit candles. They were totally unaware of the impending threats that would upend their world as their lights flickered far behind the secure nooks and crannies of screen panels. They were going to a special room that was unusual because it was almost in the middle of the estate. The heiresses, assuming he was still aware that she held that position following her betrayal of the Hyuga clan's marriage customs. When he became Hokage, he would undoubtedly attempt to end these customs. All of a sudden, there was a huge flash, and a huge, colorful barrier appeared all around her home. Sakura came to a skidding halt. Muted. "Oh no," she said. "We're already too late." Even though the barrier appeared to be releasing some energy of its own, Kakashi froze, feeling a malevolent presence in the air. He didn't recognize the barrier, but he could already tell that it was at least an S rank and that it was a long, lost forbidden kind, since even he didn't recognize it. He must have taken that barrier from the ruins of the Uzumaki clan. Then Sakura hissed, "That idiot! He can't do this on his own. Dang it, stupid idiot." They heard a swish of movement above them. They could see a huge white bird flying through the air toward them. Sigh. However, Sakura was still too agitated to realize that there was still a way to get in touch with him. That idiot, he knows he's not able to seal him away yet, and he's in no shape to fight, but he just had to. Grabbing Sakura's shoulder, Kakashi shook it. "Sakura, all jutsu have a weakness. This one as well. We'll break it." "But how?" The member of Root jumped down. "Kakashi, Naruto's. We already know Sai. Hurry, if we're going to reach him before it's too late, we're going to need your wings." "I'm so sorry for what I'm about to do, but I have to contain what I can, or a lot more people are going to die." Following a spectacular flash, all she could see outside the window were luminous hues that were suspended in the rain. A roadblock. She said, "What are you doing, again? Why was he acting in this way? For what reason was he trapping them?" He was already racing toward the location of the screams before she could try to figure out the answers. She ran after him, refusing to hide or tuck her tail. He called over his shoulder, "Which direction is the breaker box?" As he saw her, obviously realizing he couldn't stop her. She gestured toward the general direction, bewildered. "Why?" But before he could respond, They had arrived at the baby's room, and she frantically wished the scene away. Even the most seasoned people were frightened by the atmosphere alone. It seethed in the dark and smelled of blood. The furniture was shattered into pieces, the room was torn apart, and a man stood calmly in the middle of it all. A strange wide weapon was in a gloved hand. She realized it was a gunbuy, and perhaps the object of a dramatic spin that ripped the room apart. And keeping it motionless, he stood nonchalantly, as though he had been anticipating them and not in the least bit suspicious following his journey here. Her guardian was standing behind the man, trembling, with the baby in his arms for protection, and with deep gashes across his front. "The Kyuubi's not here," he exclaimed before he saw them. When he did, his pale eyes widened. The couple was also observed by the intruder. "There you are," he said simply, facing away from them. His voice had a cool calmness about it that was almost hypnotizing. "The Kyuubi host of this generation. Our meeting was cut short last time." As his hand clamped around his wrapped wrist, trembling a little, Naruto's following swallow could be heard, and his face revealed his fear. The tension that suffocates the air like a fog on a dismal night is exacerbated by regret, fear, and even shame. Our meeting ended abruptly. And then she realized. Naruto was running from this attacker. Naruto was not forced to run, not yet. Wanting to know what was going on, Hinata turned back to the intruder. Under his mane of hair, a barely perceptible Uchiha crest was proudly displayed on his back, free from the armor he wore. Long hair, arranged in spikes of ebony, blew softly in the wind from a rift in the wall that had now been torn. His placement of the armor conveyed a sense of pride, as though he was challenging anyone to approach him from behind. In all honesty, that crest alone exuded haughtiness. He turned to face Naruto and said, "I long laid out a plan for the day of my revival, but..." He was attractive by many measures. A well-proportioned face and a robust physique. His deathly pale skin and black sclerae, which contrasted with the deep red of his irises, were the only things that marred such perfection. The eyes of the Uchiha, the Sharingan, the reanimated, and those brought to life for death matches. Long ago, Konoha sent the Uchiha to their graves, and this specific one, this peculiar old animosity. Naruto mouthed, "Don't look in his eyes." As he shot a terrified glance in Hinata's direction, she nodded and lowered her eyes. For Kabuto to reanimate, of all people, this is the last trump card he has. "The plan, my infinite Tsukuyomi, was simple," he added, his voice full of laughter and rage that verged on madness, and he reprimanded Naruto for keeping a Uchiha waiting. "But most importantly, my plan was absolute. But, I wake to find things have not gone accordingly. 3 crucial pieces have been misplaced, one of which I'm told you bear." In his mind, Naruto was supposed to keep Uchiha waiting. After swallowing, Naruto put himself between her and the resurrected villain in an effort to collect himself and make amends. Having run out of space on his leg holsters, he slowly withdrew his folded bow from the small of his back, which also had a few blades strapped to it. He pushed his custom bow down, allowing its limbs to lock into position, saying, "So you're here for it, then. Uchiha Madara." After that, he produced an odd arrow with a device attached to its tip. When he inserted a battery into it, he flinched in shock. "How did you know to come here?" Hinata gasped when the name was confirmed, and Madara gave her a sneer of cruelty. She had hoped it had been a case of twisted genjutsu. However, Naruto was aware of this. "I had anticipated it. I ask the questions, host. Now, you will account for what is mine, Kyuubi. The Hachibi's location and the Rinnegan. Once I have them, I will take care of you." Dread pricked Hinata's soul as her eyes widened in horror. No, not now, of all times, not him. Naruto is in pain, the infant. On the other hand, Naruto appeared to have gained confidence. Perhaps this was due to his understanding of the man's motivations. The most valuable item he could ever hope to protect. Raising his weapon with confidence, he whacked and drew the string back. The arrow was traveling at the speed of light, in the direction Hinata had indicated just a moment before. Since it exploded through the wall and was confined by the barrier, it must have also had some bombing jutsu on it. Almost immediately after, all of the lights and electrical equipment in her home went dark. The baby's muffled cries were the only sound to break the silence, which left them almost in pitch. To make Uchiha blind, he snapped his bow back into position and said, "Who says I am, anyway, dude?" He had confined them to a space that was too small to use it effectively. Her blood ran cold as the Uchiha's lips curled in a mocking smile, now hardly discernible except by the flashes of lightning raging outside and the glowing red of the barrier. Summoning jutsu. Naruto fell to his knees, clenching his teeth and clutching his stomach in agony. Through his moans, she called out to him, "Naruto." But he shook his head. As if to say, Attack. She felt him take her hand and gently squeeze it before uncurling her fingers to reveal her palm. I'm alright. Stay back. One more squeeze. Madara said, the Kyuubi indeed, in a monotone. Where is Nagato, the Rinnegan? Naruto stumbled to his feet, like I tell you. Madara blinked, and even such a small gesture frightened her, for such expressions would precede his rage, which only the first Hokage himself could match and control. Why was Naruto unable to simply take them away? Then she realized. The infant. Madara was obstructing him, and he would also have to grab their son. Or maybe his condition was so bad that he momentarily forgot his new method. Her heart pounded. What a monster this man was. He wouldn't even care if he slaughtered millions. In order to prevent the inevitable deaths that would follow this man's resurrection, Naruto had cast the barrier. However, Naruto wasn't prepared to imprison such an immortal god. Like Shinobi, even if he had a grand scheme. A whole group of ninja, with specialists in every area, would be required. His hold on her hand tightened as though he could sense her fear, and he said quietly but loudly, he's nothing to worry about, Hinata. He did this as though he was oblivious to the hideous thing in front of them. Uchihas are like dogs. Dogs fighting over who's alpha, trust me, Sasuke and me did it all the time. It's just a matter of staring them in the eyes and establishing. Madara's foot struck Naruto in the face with a swivel that was elegant but incredibly quick. They ended up in a heap after the impact sent him slamming into her. The Uchiha laughed. You must be a fool. Ow. Naruto wiped the blood from his face and rolled off her. You okay, Hinata? The Uchiha was so angry that he nearly snarled as he pulled Naruto toward him by the collar. And to think, not only have you hidden my Rinnegan eyes and the Hachibi away, but you've taken my pawn, as well. The remark caused Naruto to twitch, clenching his fingers into a fist. But he played it off with a smirk. Yeah, I did. By the way, I have a name. It's Namikaze Uzumaki Hyuga. Naruto. Might want to remember that. The one who'll stop that little daydream of yours. Then he started to move quickly. The Uchiha was keeping up flawlessly even in the dark, but Hinata saw flashes of him in the lightning, his silhouette slamming his feet and fists at Madara, throwing blades, and slashing away. Moves that would kill a normal human. She was able to watch their chakra as it spiraled and flared in the darkness like fireworks when the Hyuga heiress silently said, Byakugan. However, Naruto's fighting was hindered by his insistence on walling up the Kyuubi, and his reserves were low. Regarding Madara's, she had never seen someone with his levels before. Of all the people she knew, Naruto did come the closest, but that was also taking into account Kurama's reserves. Was this how he wanted to fight Madara? Then Hinata understood the reason behind his behavior. He wanted Madara's full focus on him rather than Ko, who was trying to creep away into the darkness. Yes, remove the baby. The room seemed to be filled with sparks from their clashing blades and gunbai, which were constantly illuminated by chakra moves. Both of fire and whirling chakra gushes. However, Madara was aware of and enjoyed the fact that every time she lit a flame, Naruto had to work even harder to control it. Hinata gazed at her hand, which Naruto had unfurled, feeling the need to watch over her child and to keep her husband safe. Launch an assault. Fight. Her panicked thoughts were interrupted by a shout. Madara grabbed Naruto by the throat after he was flung across the room. Where? Hinata was wise enough not to look up during the brief pause. The man sighed as Ko approached the door. So you've trained against the Mangekyo. Interesting. But you will still tell me. Naruto groaned out loud. You're not getting any of them, you freakin' relic. His fingers were glowing with HN chakra as he withdrew his hand, ready to take the Kyuubi away from Naruto. Then I'll pull the Kyuubi from you right now. Naruto's hands clawed at Madara's arm while hissing, and then. Gentle step. Twin lion fists. This time, her chakra. Blazing technique illuminated the entire room. She had to try to help, even if she couldn't kill him. After running, she was suddenly flung into the air while clutching her stomach. Bothersome, woman, exclaimed Madara. Ko called out, Hinata, but it was too late. She broke a table when she crashed into it. She felt blood trickle down her head as her vision wavered. With calculating and ruthless eyes, the recently created Madara clone that had attacked denigrated her. The young man writhed in the real one's grasp as he tightened his hold. Tell me, Uzumaki scum, is this Hyuga your lover? Naruto gave a fierce hiss. This fight is just between me and you. Leave her out of this. He swung a summoned katana up, slicing the hands, deterring him. However, as the hands started to reorganize themselves, only ash appeared instead of squirts of blood. No, he responded in a casual and thoughtless manner. This is between me and the Kyuubi, you're just a mere carcass in the way. Now that Naruto was distracted, Madara started weaving seals, and Naruto pushed his hands down to protect himself from the Uchiha's knee as it sailed up. Crap. Kaden. Gokakyu no Jutsu. Naruto just managed to get out of the way as a massive burst of flames erupted from his mouth. He skidded across the scorched floorboards and landed close to Ko. Ko was trapped behind him when the door frame he was trying to reach collapsed due to the flames. The baby began to scream as it became even hotter. Naruto gritted his teeth and looked at the Hyuga and his son. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. The clones surrounded Ko in a defensive position at his command. Hinata believed she heard him whisper, "You drop my son and I'll kill you," under his breath. "I'll protect him with my life, but watch out for Hinata, Sama." To the dismay of both men, Madara continued to stare at Hinata with a disgusted expression on his face. A Hyuga and an Uzumaki. For one of the so-called great clans to abandon their heritage. What a whore. The village that Hashirama I created has degraded so much. Once more, his hands began to move in preparation for a new wave of fire-based jutsu. Naruto growled, his irises turning yellow and the skin around his eyes turning orange. "I don't think so, hag." He ran towards Madara and swung his limbs in a variety of ways to try to confuse him, all quickly to stop him from using ninjutsu again. "What you call degradation I call process," he exclaimed. While some of his strikes were clearly alien, such as his tiger claw form, others were more contemporary. Hinata also momentarily recognized a few of Guy's taijutsu moves. "And you're wrong to underestimate the Hyuga," Naruto growled, his arms seizing Madara's block. "Do it." When he said the latter, he wasn't speaking to Madara. Hinata appeared from behind as instructed, her lion-shaped auras already formed and glowed with all of her remaining strength. Now Hinata. The man's head was torn off, and then it was replaced by a piece of wood. She landed at Naruto's feet after sailing through the air. It was, "I'm so sorry," she said. "How can I strike him when he can already see it coming?" She was boiling with frustration. She had not trained to battle the Sharingan, so she was not like Naruto. The very thing that they outperformed with those eyes was what her clan mainly depended on. However, he was right there, whispering, "Don't stop there," which briefly gave her a renewed sense of excitement. "Hope, even, spin me." She took hold of his arms and swung him around while nodding. His feet flew into Madara's face due to the momentum, and before the man could recover, she was right behind Naruto, her Byakugan blazing and her movements quick but devoid of chakra. This time, his Sharingan alone would not be enough to keep up with her. The two blades Naruto had thrown to her almost made up for the technique's lack of effectiveness without chakra's assistance. The air was flecked with ash and stripes of something that looked like paper. In fact, Naruto chuckled at Madara's short-term solution before rejoining, a huge Rasengan whirling in his grasp. "Hell hath no fury, eh?" But then, in the vibrant flames of a massive, still, partially formed rib cage, the scale tipped over to Madara's side once more. The floorboards appeared to split in different directions as a massive blade crashed down, separating them from the man and causing the earth to tremble. In hindsight, Madara might have called the entire Susanoo into existence only because of Naruto's barrier. Or maybe he didn't think they were worth the trouble. "Boredom stricken," he said, "the Hyuga did once nearly rival the Uchiha clan, his perfect appearance returning in the light of his peculiar jutsu." His voice was devoid of any hint of caution. Nothing had been accomplished despite all of their attacks. He glared at Hinata, causing Naruto to growl in obvious rage. "But they are no longer even a fraction of what the Uchiha are. We outpowered them eons ago." With practiced speed, Naruto's fingers swung up into signs as he raised his hands. "Those you call whore are gonna be the ones to send you back to where you belong, now come at me." The man chuckled. He went on, despite the Rasengan tearing from the Uchiha's hand to his shoulder, saying, "You're a pathetic container, not even a full-bred Uzumaki." Using Naruto's position against him, he flipped him face first into the ground and locked him there, saying, "You have no hope of getting out of this the victor, unless you give me what I want. Now, again, where are my Rinnegan?" He was spat at by Naruto. "I am losing my patience with you, now. You are becoming boring." Naruto smiled. "And I ain't gonna stop, and I'm guessing you ain't either, so let's just skip this part and move on to the next phase or this ain't ever going to end." The Uchiha got a frown. "So you have inherited the Senju's infuriatingly annoying will. That is unfortunate, for you." The real Madara's eyes absorbed Ko's, and he swung his arm, the broad reach of his gunbai tearing through Naruto's clones until it struck its final target just as Naruto landed into Hinata, arms wrapped around her, before Naruto could escape. A Madara clone ran for Hinata before Naruto could summon all the chakra in him to teleport to her. Hinata screamed as blood sprayed on them. No, Naruto yelled as he looked back frantically. However, it was pointless because Madara had won with a single, skillful move in just 1 second. The baby screamed in Madara's arm as the man who had been her guardian all her life lay on the floor, a kunai pointing to his wailing face. I will give you one last chance, host. Sakura. All jutsu have a weakness. This one as well. We'll break it. But how? The member of Root jumped down. Kakashi, Naruto's. We already know Sai. Hurry, if we're going to reach him before it's too late, we're going to need your wings. Kakashi gestured up. If my hunch is right, there's a failsafe that's been altered into it. Naruto would do that. Up above, in the direct center, with enough force of both chakra and impact, it'll break and dissolve. Sakura raised her fists and nodded. Right. Spreading its wings and lowering its smooth body, the black dot and white inkbird smashed into the earth. Get on, quick. Exploding reds and blues showed glimpses of a fight inside the barrier. They needed to act quickly. Kakashi took a scroll out of his pouch and hoped it would suffice. They flew into the air as the bird flapped its wings. As he flew to the top, Kakashi continued to explain. We have to do this together. Sakura, I'll need your strength, and remember, it has to be in the direct center or it'll amount to nothing. Then I'll have to use my lightning blade, understand? Yes. Now break it. The infant screamed from the man's arms, but Madara's gaze was fixed on Naruto, who was holding a blade near the infant's neck. Hinata gave him a desperate look, but he was motionless, his brow furrowed in a plethora of emotions and his eyes squeezed tightly. Anger. Hopelessness. Begging was pointless. Nevertheless, he dropped his weapons and let them fall to the ground, saying, Madara, keep this between us. Please. Just between us. The Uchiha laughed. You play surrender like a dog, but we both know you don't mean it. With a wave of helplessness, Hinata turned to face him, but he was still standing firmly, defiant. I made it to where I am the only one who knows where he's in hiding, Madara. Only me and nothing on earth can force me to talk. And you know this. I will not give you the Rinnegan, the Hachibi, or Kurama. You will never have them again. That is my final answer. I will die keeping them from you if that is what it takes, and you will never find him through anyone else because I'm the only key, Madara. Madara scowled. You may be willing to die, but what about the life of this child? You would toss it aside for you idealism? The woman must disagree. How could a mother forsake her own child? Naruto's eyes never left Madara's as he remained determined. So you don't care. Quite the opposite, as evidenced by the transparent lines that ran down his cheeks. You kill him, you lose me for sure. That is the only middle ground, and when I'm gone, who knows how long it'll take for the Kyuubi to be revived. Then you'd have to search all over for those eyes and the Hachibi, and I swear on my life you will never find them. Madara scowled more deeply. Hinata trembled as her insides burned. As she ran for him, Naruto yelled, No, stop, and Madara automatically started weaving seals with just one hand and a stream of wood style that had been torn from the ground. This threw her back at Naruto, or rather, one of his clones. No. Take me instead. Just put the baby down, she exclaimed. The baby screamed, You're useless, woman. Madara didn't even blink as a drop of blood trickled down the infant's neck. She had to suppress her cries as Naruto held her despite the fact that the scratch was not deep. For a brief moment, she fought, but the idea of the knife aimed at her son. Now Jinchuriki, you will comply with me or they will suffer for it. Despite the fact that his fingers were digging into his palms, he managed to say, No. So be it. Please, Madara, Naruto uttered with clenched jaw. He collapsed to the ground. This is between me and you. I'm begging you. Hand him to his mother and we'll take this outside the village. Just leave them out of this. He was trembling. From him, gold light began to flicker, almost exploding into his chakra mode. Madara gave a mean sneer. I do things on no one's terms but my own. You will obey me or bathe in the blood of those you care for most until I have my way. The man stopped and looked up. This barrier you created, even it will crumble, just as your rebellion will. Madara only brought his blade down long enough to create a vial, which he then let fall to the ground. Naruto stared at it numbly as it rolled toward him. His gaze shifted to hers as she struggled against the clone. I will take this sack of flesh with me. If you wish for it to reunite with its mother in one piece, you will retrieve the Rinnegan and deliver them and the Hachibi's host, unconscious, to me yourself and alone. If you refuse, I'll slit its throat. Then the Hyuga horse. The only things preventing Naruto's trembling fists from swinging or his golden chakra from engulfing him in the power of the Kyuubi were his emotional control and the training he must have received. Only a few inches separated their son's young, defenseless body from the blade. And one mistake. Naruto kept swallowing his pride. Where? Madara smiled with satisfaction. The valley. I think you know the one, host. Hinata finally snapped, yelling, no, and rushing after the madman once more, but it was too late when the Uchiha started to move. He was lost. Just as Sakura broke his seal and the rest of Team Kakashi landed, he vanished using a transportation jutsu. The barrier disintegrated as he had predicted, enabling him to transport out of there. And it made no difference. In any case, he would have managed to get out. It was done. Kakashi got going. Naruto, with his fist slamming into the already shattered floorboards and the vial falling, Naruto's more composed exterior completely collapsed. No. Hinata touched his shoulder shyly as she walked up to him. She started crying into him after saying, I'm sorry. Her whole body trembled as she cried. What have we done, Ko, and the baby? He buried his head in her shoulder for support as he embraced her and started to cry as he gave in to the situation's despair. He had never experienced anything nearly as bad as this. Much worse. It was either the end of the world as they knew it or the survival of this helpless infant. No, it was impossible. He kept saying, I'll get him back, as if it were a mantra. They stayed this way for a while until Naruto, at a loss for words, finally found a way to control his emotions and looked around at his teammates, who were now gathered around him. There were now 2 people living in the room that had once housed 4. Sakura knew it was too late for that soul without even having to look at the source of the large pool of blood that was soaking the floorboards. His forehead seal long since deactivated. Naruto, Sakura muttered following a protracted silence, let me heal you. Just as much as needed, he uttered in a raspy voice. I can't teleport anymore like this. Kakashi asked, where are you planning to go? Naruto remained silent, simply moved his grip on Hinata to allow Sakura to start healing him. Her hands hovered over his sternum, glowing green with the power of her cage. Leveled ninjutsu, and he closed his eyes as his head dropped back into her lap. She whispered, now, Naruto, you can release the Kyuubi's chakra, he's long gone. The voice of Kurama resounded from deep within. I'm so sorry, Naruto, but you made the right decision. The Hyuga murmured, I should have listened, off to the side. I should have fled the moment you said code black. Sakura whispered, calm down, Hinata, despite the fact that her own eyes were beginning to water. Naruto, we can still remedy T. Shut up, he cried out loud, this is all your fault. Although he didn't intend to say it aloud, he did. Sakura stopped healing, and several sets of eyes, hers, Kakashi's, and Sai's, stared at him. Although he hadn't said who he was yelling at, it was obvious from his arm covering the seal on his stomach. Kurama. Hinata brought his arm down gently, bending her head. Please, she said in a whisper. She started crying again despite Naruto's hands covering her face. Don't blame him for this. It was my call. It should have been me. I would rather it had been me than him. I'm sorry. Don't blame Kurama for this. It's me, Ko, and my baby. It was the first time she had ever been apart from him. His face contorted. I'll get him back. No, we will. However, she continued to weep uncontrollably. My baby's gone. Why not me? He wiped her tears and shook his head, whispering to her, because you are still a Hyuga. He could hurt me more by using our baby. We can't regret that you're safe. That we still have at least one of you now. I won't. But squeezing the vial, he said, shush, it's going to be alright. I'll see to that. But you can't do that, Naruto. You can't give him what he wants, it'll be the end of everything. He'll rip the Kyuubi from you and you'll die. Kurama will be enslaved by the Jubi and then he'll imprison everyone in the infinite Tsukuyomi. I can't lose you. We can't allow that, ever. But if you don't, he'll kill our son. We're still alive. We can still do something. And we will, it's because I came here that this happened. Kakashi, who was remarkably composed, said, even if you hadn't, it would have still come to this. Sai, who observed silently from the side, was the only other person who shared Kakashi's composure. Naruto stopped and probably listened to the voice inside of him once more. You're right, but doesn't change the fact I have to do this. And I'm taking you with me, Hinata. I'm never leaving you again. She gave a nod. Yes, Naruto. Sakura retreated as he stood up after gathering himself. He blinked in bewilderment as he looked at her. How in the world did you get here so fast? Sasuke, was her response. He was livid about you suddenly leaving on us, you just left. We tried going after you as fast as possible but... She glanced around. Once we reached the village I lost him. I don't know where he is now. Kakashi's eyebrows raised. Well, that's concerning. Sai gave a nod. But we don't have time to find out where he disappeared to. No, said Naruto. We don't. He'll catch up to me on his own anyways. Taking Hinata by the hand, he guided her over a heap of shattered furniture. He muttered, I'll pay for the damages, though. It doesn't matter. Yes it does. He took one final look around the room. There was nothing left of the completely destroyed house. The interior had been ripped apart, the walls had crumbled. He sniffed and looked at the floorboards, which were red from the man who was killed for Naruto's enormous error and black from the flames of Madara's jutsu. Then, for no apparent reason, a tiny flash of silver gleamed in the starlight, catching his attention. He leaned over and picked it up. It was a bolt. Kakashi's voice came from what seemed like an infinite number of universes away, a whole other world. Naruto, we'll need to meet up with the rest of your team. Take us to your base too. He grimly stared at the metal piece as he twisted it between the pads of his thumb and forefinger. Brother doesn't allow guests to the base, friends or not. No intruders. I'm making an extreme exception with just Hinata. Besides, I need to handle this myself. Kakashi had anticipated this response. He was acquainted with Sasuke. He knew Naruto, though. Well, what just happened has proven otherwise, Naruto, he replied. You're going to have to let us help you. We don't exactly have any other choice, do we? Know the outcome of this encounter affects the entire world's continuation, Naruto. Not just your family. Naruto nodded after a prolonged pause. I know. I still can't give up, though. For some reason, he kept putting the bolt in one pocket in the world, ending vile in the other. A bolt. The only glittering gem left after a night of complete devastation, so seemingly inconsequential but all the more valuable. An indication that there was still hope. He reflected on how he had come to be here, despite his flaws, hardships, and even the events that had culminated in this particular night. How it all started, and he vowed that there would be no more regrets after dawn. It ended like this. How it started. Anarchy. He wasn't entirely certain when the chaos started, whether it was with the village's founders, Hashirama and Madara, or even when Pain's capture permanently tipped the scales. However, he was aware that the cage summit was the site of the final collapse. He only said one sentence in front of the entire cage. Come at me and me alone with everything you got because I declare war on you all. His wife gasped miles away. She whispered fearfully, fingers hovering over her lower abdomen, we're parents. Furthermore, neither of them was prepared for either of the pivots. The room was eerily quiet for a moment before becoming noisy, quick. The Raikage was leaping to his feet, his massive hands slamming loudly against the table, adding to the clamor of shouts and words that were all incoherent over the cries of the others. Danzo's goons were somewhere in it, getting ready to attack their Kyuubi, and the other cage's guards were getting ready to strike too. In the background, Obito was fuming with rage and just a second away from barging in after losing his mask. Even the most steeled warrior would have been exhausted by any of these factors, but Sasuke's expression was what really unsettled Naruto. This was as ticklish as he had ever seen him. Sasuke actually started to charge at him while yelling, "What are you doing?" Naruto took the barrage from the Uchiha and the others as a sign that it was time to go. Just as Sasuke got close to him, he withdrew and turned, snatching Sasuke's wrist. With his other hand reaching for his other party, he rapidly closed his eyes in focus, giving Sasuke no time to jerk himself free. He pushed the power that was bubbling inside of him through his body, and a moment later they were in a cabin far from the chaos, where everything was quiet except for the snow falling. No noise, no smoke. Sasuke blinked a few times in confusion before reciting the same question after reorienting himself and recalling Naruto's new teleporting technique. Why? What the? 'Cause it's the only way. Naruto rubbed his temple in response to that statement. The room was spinning, and he questioned whether he would ever get used to the sensation that his special teleporting gave him. Oh, geez. Now shush. Sasuke yelled, clearly not paying attention to Naruto's final request. Wait to what? Rather, he pushed Naruto against the wall, pinning him with a vicious grip on his biceps. Oh no, Naruto braced himself as Sasuke's left hand loosened in preparation to slug him, saying, "You're an idiot. Do you have any clue what you're doing? This wasn't part of the plan." Listen, Sasuke, it's not. Sasuke's fist, however, never made contact. Rather, the third party grabbed hold of his trembling elbow while his arm stayed out in midair. That's enough, Sasuke. Like a ghost in the room, Sasuke went pale, and Naruto understood that the voice sounded like a ghost to him. The eyes of the younger Uchiha grew wide. Unfeasible, he turned slowly. Shisui. You started a... What, again? Through his head puppet, Nagato posed the question, reflecting the thoughts of almost every Taka. Across the long dining table, Sasuke in particular was frowning at Naruto and tapping his fingers impatiently on the marble surface as though to say, "Yeah, tell us about that." A fool. He was still furious an hour after reaching the summit. However, Naruto shouldn't have had any higher expectations. Naruto felt even more uneasy as lightning flashed outside. They were in a large dining room with numerous large windows, and he could see what seemed like the entire world being struck by lightning from each of them. A lowly Konoha resident like him was not yet used to the height and structure of this tower, particularly in the presence of evidence of devastation. Naruto took a long sip from his drink and turned his attention back to the people seated around the table and the prepared meal. Boy, oh boy. How to accomplish this? Said I started a war. Pain's hands stiffened on the table before him, and his brow raised. He was the only one without a plate in the entire dining hall. In his isolated chamber, Nagato was most likely eating at the moment. As a substitute, they used Yahiko's corpse puppet as his liaison. Even now, a war, do you? He was abruptly interrupted by Naruto. I had to, Nagato. I couldn't let Obito and the cage start it, and believe me, it was on the tips of their tongues. And if any one of them had started it, everyone would have began fighting each other, and then more villages would end up like us, Konoha and the rain. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I started my own war. He watched Nagato's reaction as the final word fell weakly. Suigetsu smiled from the other side of the table, predicting what the man in the Akatsuki cloak would do. His fingers squeezed the hilt of his enormous sword, which he was eager to wield in this reign, from beneath the table. Seeing his excitement, Karen jerked at his arm and gave him a stern shake of her head, as though to say, "What the hell, Suigetsu? Put an end to it." His cheeks flushed, but he concealed it with a sharp cough that broke the stillness. As though reflecting Nagato's own response to his statement, the pain rubbed its temple. Yahiko's skin was pierced with steel rods that gleamed. A war? You fool. No, you imbecile. What is the difference between what you have done and my original ghetto plan? Except that you might have done it only to save yourself? Is that it? Naruto nibbled on his lip. Already, his new alliance with Nagato was precarious. Did Naruto really want to keep him from going back to his original plan? Still. He objected, "It's not like that, Nagato, you have to listen to me. I am, and you had not discussed this with me beforehand, and it's downright hypocritical after all you've done to try to stop the discord." Conan's fingers clenched around her glass as she sat next to the head pane. "I would have to agree with Nagato, Naruto. How could you, after everything?" She had a greater desire for true peace than anyone else in the room. Konoha had succeeded in capturing Conan, while the Akatsuki had taken Naruto. Soon after, she fled somewhat later than he had, but with fresh eyes. Instead, she returned home with a renewed and fervent belief in Yahiko's initial beliefs. She was the one who had prevented Naruto and Nagato's final battle and persuaded the latter of Naruto's role as the link between them and Yahiko's relapse. As clear as the glass in his hands, he could still recall it. Like Nagato, he ran on his last legs, his knife racing straight for Nagato's heart with every step, while the protective rod in front of Nagato's machine approached his vitals. He made the sacrifice. Then the air rushed in and someone yelled, "Stop." Her paper's ability to latch and her angel. Like Wing's ability to spread. Her words and perseverance. He carries Yahiko's spirit inside him. The flash of a silver key. Additionally, the shell of pain melting around Nagato's heart. "There's something about you. Why such ability? Why now? I'm the one with the Sage of Six Paths eyes, yet you did what I couldn't. I can only wonder what more you'll do, with this nation." The Biju. How the remaining chains around his wrists dropped to the floor. "Since there is no longer need for our fighting, you will be under my protection. My resources are now yours. My city, my supplies, even my alliance. Everything. I will see to it the masked man does not interfere with Yahiko's true dreams anymore." The battle had been worthwhile. But, said Nagato, stray from the path or fail to reach it in a decent length of time, and it's not what you think, guys. Then, pray tell, is your intention? Naruto finished his glass of juice and took another long gulp. One of the servants, one of the many people recently hired by Pain Sama, for menial labor until the village and its economy could be stabilized once more, swiftly accepted his cup. "More, please. Thanks." With a nod, the rough-hewn man left. "For one," he continued, "this ain't the traditional approach. I did it because the cage were about to snap and Obito wasn't going to help any. And you know what happens when they do? A bloody war." Karen muttered, "Which you started anyways," and pushed her partially completed plate aside. "Seriously, what were you thinking?" As she spoke, Suigetsu added, "Yeah, I knew you were an idiot before, but, man, does this just top it." Naruto gave him a narrowed look. Shut up, Suigetsu. The swordsman sipped his drink loudly and grinned. You know it's true, buddy. Conan let out a sigh. Enough, boys. In any case, Naruto added, raising his voice to ensure that everyone was fully focused on him. It had to be me to stop it. By doing so I made it so that instead of attacking each other, they'd have to focus on me. Solely on me. And my team as well, complained Sasuke. The servant had brought Naruto's drink back by that point. Naruto rolled his eyes at Sasuke and looked over his shoulder as he put down the glass. If you want to leave, you can, jerk. But no, you just have to be obsessed with wanting to use Kurama against Danzo. That was our original deal, Naruto. You promised you would use the Kyuubi inside you to our advantage. The servant's cup slipped and broke in his hand. Splashes of red liquid hit the table. Immediately, Naruto was dripping with it, the crimson discoloring his clothing. Ah, dude, I'm so sorry, I'll get you another. Naruto yelled, it's fine, as he frantically attempted to remove the mess from his clothing before it could cause more stains. The man appeared to be unsure of what to do with himself as he stood there with some napkins in his hands, crumbled tightly. Naruto urged him to simply leave after yanking one final napkin from him. The man worked so fast that he didn't even try to clean up the mess or offer to. As he hurried past her, Conan gave him an odd look but remained silent. Naruto stood, flushed and finished wiping up the juice. In addition to the most recent excitement, he had a lot on his mind and started to pace, finding it difficult to sit still or even remain motionless. Listen everyone. As I was saying before, this ain't about huge battles. No, this is about reaching them, one by one, until we all reach the same understanding that the people of this world need, and then, destroying Madara's influence so all this strife doesn't build up again and lead into a real war. What I started isn't a war where there will be innocence, but a line of direct one-on-one confrontations. That is my goal. Pain gave him a stern look and said, you're not thinking realistically. There will always be innocent bystanders, Naruto. And reaching who exactly? The cage. I have faith in almost every single one of them. They're the best of the best. Shinobi who have reached the peak of their nindo, so if I'm going to truly make a difference, who better to start with than them? The world of politics has affected all of their ways, though, I think. Instead of just moving to protect people, they have to think of things like balance and villages relationships and all that junk first. Karen snorted. That junk is kind of important, Naruto. That may be, but it's being misused, which leads me to one of the greatest problems in the ninja world. The Biju and the use of people as hosts. As Jinchuriki. We're treated more like pawns than human beings, and that has to stop. The Biju should be free, and even now I want to let them out from the ghetto, but I can't until I know the world will leave them alone and be in the right mindset. Like many things, they're not there to control, and if treated properly, they pose no threat, and we should be following them. Regarding the cage mission, it will be challenging to break the tight hold that political matters have on the populace. I recall Granny Chio's behavior, but I also recall how genuine she was prior to her passing. The fact that we were outsiders was irrelevant now. The life of my best friend, her cage, was what counted. In the ninja world, things should be like that. Conan grinned and said, you're more interested in restoring humanity than politics in general. The humanity that binds all of us together. Yes, I'm grateful, Conan. And to bring it home, I'm going to grab each and every cage in that manner and remind them of our differences from the rest of the world's civilian population. Since Gaara is almost there already, why wouldn't I be able to rescue the others from their torment? Peace could only be achieved at that point, and it will never be at the expense of other people's lives. Not in the most authentic manner. Sasuke sneered at this, but the others appeared to be listening intently or were engrossed in what he was saying. Conan, in particular, had that gloomy smile on her lips. The human nature of things is to repeat themselves, but... And I will do so without the big battles, Naruto said, his shoulders squared. Traditional battles are the last thing I want, I assure you. Let's leave that to the samurai and their fixation on the notion that honor is earned in combat. I'm returning to the shadows. Man to man only. Or female. He swung his hands to emphasize what he was saying. This is about taking the crosshairs off the people, off the victims who would suffer in the clash, and painting it on something that can smother it out of existence. So you're going to be playing shield, then, huh? Suigetsu sneered. Swirls, don't think it will be as lovely and successful as you're making it up in your silly mind. Sasuke cut Naruto off before he could respond, saying, I don't care what you want. We made an agreement regarding Danzo, and now that you've altered the situation, you unintentionally put my team in danger without their permission. Additionally, you have undoubtedly taken your new partner along for the ride. He looked icily at Nagato's host body, and Conan stiffened next to it. Pain's eyes narrowed, and he said, "You, Uchiha, have no business with the Kyuubi. Nagato, stop it. Sasuke. Kurama is solely his own property. I will only be his prisoner for as long as it takes me to find a way to break us up. And I must admit, Sasuke," Conan said, "that we can no longer avoid getting involved in this affair. The real Akatsuki, however, will continue to support Naruto. In addition, this Obito character has abused our organization, and we have unresolved business with him." Naruto turned to the Taka and nodded, saying, "Thank you again, Conan, and I never said you guys had to join my crusade." However, he grinned at Sasuke and said, "I got my hands on some scrolls that you might be interested in while in Konoha's custody. I mean, Danzo is on the cage list. I'll give them up to you once we're ready to actually take care of Danzo. Oh, and you gotta be with me all the way," he said, removing a small piece of parchment from his back pouch and holding it up tauntingly. "Whether we like it or not, we are in this together." Sasuke grimaced but remained silent. "All right, Karen, Suigetsu. Are you all with me?" He extended his fist. With a broad smile on his face, Suigetsu greeted it with his long, slender, muscular arm. "Are Kisame and his Samahata still attractive to your eyes?" "Yes, Swirly. I'm not going to miss this. Additionally, while we're out, this will be the ideal opportunity to seize the other blades as well." Naruto chuckled. "Yeah, I imagine even with the Akatsuki split, he'll still be a problem, along with Obito and Zetsu." He still had his sights set on the 7 swords, including Kisami's. "Thank you, Karen. How about you? Will you still come if Sasuke doesn't?" She prickled up like a cat and hissed, "You're an idiot," at the mention of Sasuke. "The Taka isn't yours to command," she said, avoiding Sasuke's face. Suigetsu tensed from next to her. With a smile that revealed his strangely sharp teeth, he said, "But, Karen, he'll get himself killed without you." As though that were enough to persuade her, she grinned and said, "He would." Naruto interpreted her pushing her glasses up as a yes because she didn't say anything else. Naruto pounded his fist. "Boo-ya." Then, sobering up, he looked at Sasuke, who had turned his attention to the silent person seated next to Naruto, who had not said a word since their meal had started and had only moved the food on his plate with his chopsticks and nibbled now and then. "Shisui, what do you think of this mess he's starting?" he asked softly. "Honestly, I want to see a difference, and I've been wanting to see it for practically all my life and even after. That day, after I let myself disappear for the better good, hardly anything came of my eyes like I had hoped," the man said, putting down the sticks and then leaning forward with his fingers interlocked. He had taken off his hood since they had begun eating, exposing the bandages he wore over his sockets like a blindfold and a grim reminder. He spoke with his face pointing toward Sasuke. "If anything, it was wrong for all of us that Itachi had to carry the cross alone." Sasuke winced barely perceptibly. "Shisui, since I didn't succeed, he is the next person to try. With the cage, he is aiming for the entire system. Not just a designated spot, which I never even tried. However, I gave Itachi the rest of my sight after leaving the village out of fear of Danzo, so I'm not sure what I can do for this cause right now. Nevertheless, even though I'm disabled, I will support the 4th son in this." With a slow exhale, Sasuke closed his eyes and said, "Shisui, we need to talk." "Yes, Sasuke, but I've already made up my mind. It's what your brother would also want." Naruto turned to face Sasuke, expecting him to join in, but he didn't respond, or, for that matter, didn't respond at all. He wouldn't, of course. "Thank you, Shisui," Naruto replied, "and if it's possible, I won't let you stay this way for long." With a bewildered expression, Shisui turned his head in his direction and said, "Pardon me?" A rather large crow flew to Naruto's shoulder when he clicked his tongue. Ever since the summit, he had equipped his bird with a small strap on one leg that would hold tiny slips of paper, and Mamoru would serve as his personal messenger bird between him and his trusted Konoha comrades. For that, however, the crow did not require a Sharingan. This bird and Sharingan eye were once given to me by Itachi. He took this action as a backup plan in case Sasuke lost all sight of the light. However, the eye's activation trigger never materialized. He turned to face Sasuke, who was staring at him with his mouth open, and said, "Karen, I want you to take Itachi's crow and transplant his eye back to Shisui. I think his original goal for the bird is no longer needed." Hours would pass before they could actually complete the operation. Naruto had assumed that the eyeball could simply be popped in, and that was that after hearing so many stories of Uchiha giving and taking their Sharingan, but this was clearly not the case, especially with Shisui. The hospital was one of the few buildings in Omegakure that didn't try to reach the sky with its height. Instead, its foundation was spread out horizontally, which was one of the reasons it had been largely saved during the recent attack when many of the other buildings, especially the towers, had been toppled. A few hours after their meal, Karen had gathered him and Sasuke to discuss the transplant while Shisui waited in one of the hospital's rooms. Generally, she stated as she started to take off her medical equipment, a competent medic nin can transplant particular eye parts with minimal difficulty and a high likelihood of success if they have the necessary knowledge. However, this becomes complicated based on the condition of the optic nerves, and since his optic nerves have been severely severed and left in that condition for so long, there is very little chance that he will ever see again. I am referring to 1%. With a snap, the gloves came off. Naruto objected immediately, saying, "But you're a great healer. Since you're also an Uzumaki, you must be the most unusual medic. You know, to give him a better chance, can't you just get them back? After you do, we only need to worry about the eyes, which are the main component and are in good condition." Itachi handled it quite well. Danzo as well. He is too preoccupied with power to have made a mistake. "Even though I'm an Uzumaki, that doesn't matter when I can't handle this kind of thing," she said, shaking her head. "Furthermore, we might as well spare him the surgery and leave him alone if his nerves cannot be repaired. Yes, I can replace the eye we currently have, but it won't help if there isn't a real connection between his brain and that organ. He would still not be able to see, and it's not just his nerves. These are from the CT scan I had one of the doctors conduct," she said, taking a sheet out of a folder. "You see, it's not good. In particular, this one." She indicated one of his eye sockets, a round, gray shape on the sheet. Naruto looked more closely and saw that the white bone around the blank space appeared to be bent downward, and a portion of it was even missing, resembling a broken bridge. In addition, the innermost area was deformed. This one was probably damaged in this way as a result of the Sharingan being taken from him by force. The socket bone was broken, perhaps by some kind of tool, because he was fighting back at the time. It makes no difference if a knife or a medical device was used. It never healed properly because it still chipped away a portion of the bone. Even if he gets the eye back from Danzo, it will always be impaired and have its own set of unpleasant symptoms if his broken socket bone is left in that state. We're talking about nausea, double vision, and redness. It's not good. I suggest that he simply cover that one with an eye patch. A glass eye is also an option, of course. It will simply need to be made to order." Naruto turned his head away and uttered, "But still. The pain of losing his own eye must have been excruciating, but to have someone tear it out must have been even more agonizing. You can fix that socket. Additionally, eye switching is not new to the Uchiha. If it is, how did they do it consistently in the past? How about Obito? It's clear that his second eye is not his original. That one is in Kakashi, and they don't have issues with them in that way. Their eyes were brought in during serious accidents." "That thought crossed my mind too," she said, pressing her lips together tightly. "If we had a Uchiha doctor, this whole situation would be better. A clan must have specific techniques to help them if they want to practice eye transference on multiple members. However, I imagine that such information would have been kept as secret as possible. They would have been even more attacked for their abilities if word had gotten out about their methods." Shisui only remembered how to remove the eye, but it was implied that perhaps all Uchiha with potential prowess would have learned how to transplant eyes once they reached adulthood, but since they had been killed when Sasuke had been so young, he had not learned and was effectively useless to them in this situation. Rather than giving him false hope with a botched operation, I would feel much more at ease with him going through this with someone who has done it before. This is the only chance we have. That's it once the optic nerves and eye are reconnected. The nerves and everything else would be permanently destroyed if they were separated to try again. Not to mention that after all these years of learning to adapt, it wouldn't be good for his mental health to undergo such a delicate operation and still be blind. Would he be able to handle it after everything that he has been through? Naruto emphasized, "He's strong though. He's come this far on nothing, but this time he has us. You forget that there have been successful eye transplants performed on non-clan members before, and you act as though it's impossible. He needs this, but it's not. Do you recall the summit guy with the eye patch? If you're talking about that guard of the Mizukage, the Byakugan and the Sharingan aren't," Sasuke said, glancing at him. "Yes, they are. Quit being so arrogant. We could get assistance from those who successfully transplanted his Byakugan because their basicness would be sufficiently similar. Either that or the lightning folks. Do you recall the Hyuga incident? If you don't truly want a Hyuga's eyes, why try kidnapping them? And there's always Danzo in case things get bad. Eventually, we'll have to get that other eye back anyhow. You know, we're going to be going around all the villages, so there must be someone who can assist us somewhere. Or documents. If I have to, I'll go through each and every one." "That might actually work," Karen said, closing the folder containing Shisui's scans and placing them in a bag. But he would need to continue to stay here and let one of the doctors keep trying to repair the damage to his socket and recover his optic nerves while we travel. The extent to which this entire procedure depends on his optic nerves is beyond words. Naruto replied, and being here, he can meanwhile help watch over Nagato. With his arms crossed and his brow arched, Sasuke leaned smugly against the wall. Keep an eye on him. Is your new partner unreliable? Shut up, he growled. Through their mental link, Kurama said, he's right to not trust him, Naruto. I think even you know what's going to happen if this plan for peace gains no results. I can't just give up on him, he still has potential. But it's been a while since he was that boy your sensei trained. I'll take over if it goes back to how it was a few weeks ago, you get the idea. No you won't, Naruto said softly. The fox gave a darkly amused chuckle. When he squeezed past a family shouting about a member who was still missing, he held his breath because it was a sickening smell. It was a sight he didn't like seeing. It was a situation he didn't like being reminded of. Naruto always felt uneasy in the crowded hospital halls. In addition, the Rains hospital had partially collapsed, letting in dust and debris that people were still trying to clear out. After Konoha's counterattack, it would take them all ages to recover, and his headband would remain in his pocket until he felt ready to show it off to everyone once more, but that was not right now, not here. Through the long, thin window on the door, Naruto stealthily peered into Shisui's room, where he sat on the bed with Sasuke at his side. The elder Uchiha gently caressed Itachi's bird, and after a few seconds of Sasuke's speech, Naruto caught words like, complications, apologized, and shook his head. Sasuke's lips moved again, his face pointing downward, making it difficult for Naruto to read his lips. And Shisui was only able to get up and face the window along the wall, shoulders heavy, as he placed his hand on its cool surface. I'm sorry. It was the expression of a man who was remorseful. Shisui hadn't deserved what Danzo had done to him, and his sacrificed gift to Itachi was the only thing that could save him from total darkness, even though he had originally given it away to be used. However, it hadn't worked out, so he could use it on himself instead. Naruto's heart tightened. He only wanted what had passed to be fixed. However, reality was destroying even that idea. He deserves so much more than that prison. He can never be free until he can see again and regain his honor as a member of the elite Uchiha clan. He can only see justice for his clan with Sasuke. Perhaps Naruto should never have brought him here. Perhaps he would have been better off simply living in his sanctuary, where he had learned to live comfortably, in the abandoned temple he called home. Sasuke approached him and touched Shisui's shoulder. He was still unable to hear what they were saying, but it was obvious that they had switched topics, perhaps catching up. Sasuke appeared almost normal as he nodded his head in agreement with whatever Shisui had just said, and Shisui grinned. Naruto liked the man's calm demeanor despite the heartbreaking news, and he even laughed, most likely after making a joke. Shisui's smile reminded Naruto of Itachi, but Shisui displayed it much more. When Naruto gave Sasuke a quick side hug, he nearly choked. Shisui had been his brother's close friend, and he must have had the opportunity to watch over a much younger and innocent Sasuke at that time. He must have played with him, trained with him, and given him advice and hints, or even acted as a mediator between him and his brother when Itachi's high expectations became too much for a young boy to handle. In contrast to Naruto, Shisui would have known his parents, eaten at his house, and gone on missions with various family members. Shisui needs to find his place in Konoha, and Sasuke needs him too. This was the closest Shisui would ever get to the old Sasuke, and for a brief moment, he was almost back. Naruto cast his eyes down. Naruto would never fully comprehend the depth of Sasuke's gratitude for having such a close friend who was his own family. Not because they didn't try. Hey, I would like to view the hotel, don't we have the pent? Jumping, Naruto said, Suigetsu. Before letting Naruto go, the swordsman chuckled and said, you shouldn't be barging in on their privacy, you know, orphan boy. Naruto appeared to be trying to observe. There's space for you to speak, Naruto sneered. You also were going to. Huh. I am aware that family matters should be kept private. Yes, but you were still going to peek in. If not, why are you here? Naruto intended to start his crusade the following day, with or without Sasuke, but for the time being, they just needed beds to sleep in for the night, and Nagato was providing them with that. After a fruitless argument, the two decided to go out and explore the city and practice some kenjutsu before going to bed. As they made their way to the exit, Naruto happened to glance over the desk in the lobby and saw a man sitting alone. It was the same man from earlier, the servant who had spilled the drink on him, and he was sitting outside one of the hospital rooms with his knees pulled up to his chest. He had a small silver object in one hand, and as he looked down at it, he noticed that tears were secretly streaming down his face. No one else appeared to have noticed, as they scurried back and forth, unaware of his mental struggle. Pulling on him, Suigetsu said, "Come on. We don't have the entire day. Furthermore, don't you remember that we still have some kenjutsu to practice with you? I'll still turn you into a capable sparring partner." "Oh, I see. I'll be there." After a while of searching for a clear spot on the water with sufficient range, Suigetsu exclaimed, "What happened here, anyway?" The rain had stopped outside, and the sun was peeking through just enough as it continued its descent from the sky. Even though the rain was always so closed off, I thought it was supposed to be the most impressive and modern place. It appears terrible. With a guilty gaze, Naruto said, Danzo occurred. They didn't have a wood-style user who just made temporary homes in practically no time. Their city was a cold city of concrete, steel, and water, but for every street there was an impressive apartment with hundreds of now-scared civilians, and every one of them was an irreplaceable life. He had spent hours trying to help the village rebuild after his fight with Pain and Nagato. It had been many long hours of sweat, dripping, hard labor, a job done by many of the men and women civilians, even a few children. Similar to Sensei, Naruto still hadn't had a chance to talk to Nagato about the memorial that needed to be built for him, not because it was awkward with him or anything, but because he was very busy with the village's affairs, such as trying to make it better and recover from the dictatorship that had been in place before. Later that night, however, Naruto would find time to talk to Nagato. "Oh, they really retaliated after you were captured? That guy must have known you weren't being detained here." "Yeah. But what's done is done," Naruto said, nodding. "There is nothing to do but carry out the plan." "In a hurry," Naruto said, "and get my new blade from Kisa, before Suigetsu could finish." "Hey, you infidelity, I didn't say, go, and don't think you can outrun me," Suigetsu called, running after him with a devilish smile. "It might as well be my turf here in this rain." "Well, we'll check on that," Naruto prodded. Naruto would have noticed the shadow watching him, seething with evil intents, if he hadn't been so preoccupied with trying to divert his mind from all the pain around him. By the time Sasuke left Shisui's hotel room, it was nighttime, and Karen was nearly exhausted from trying to assist with some of the additional patients, or rather, using them as a pretext to avoid the original Taka members, and now stood in the lobby. "A brisk, come on," he said. "What, it's late. This is how the hotel is." It was his way of saying, "I'll walk you there," but since they were going to the same place anyhow, it didn't really mean anything. She blushed for a brief moment before brushing it off. She was still trying to come to terms with the fact that Sasuke wasn't hers. "Karen?" "Yes?" "There was so much to say about everything that had happened before and after the summit," she said, her feet stepping slowly on the damp pavement. However, she dared not hope he would say the impossible. "Thank you." What? When was the last time he had truly thanked her out loud? He said simply, for trying to help Shisui, and she grinned grimly. Of course, he would be grateful if it involved his clan, but she wasn't helping Shisui for him, rather, it was for Shisui, and Naruto. "But we've not even truly begun yet," she said with a sigh as she opened the hotel door for them. He whispered, "I know," and held the door open for her. "But even so, there's a chance he'll get his sight back because of you. Thank you, even if it's faint. You ought to give Naruto thanks. It was he who located him and protected Itachi's crow." She rubbed her eyes and yawned. The hotel was at least 10 stories high, making for a long, silent elevator ride. The nice thing about it, though, was that one side of the exterior was mostly windows, and as it climbed higher towards the moon, you could see the world descending through them. It was almost like flying, a sleepy flight, full of glittering stars. As though Naruto might hear her from the hotel if she didn't, she said softly, "Speaking of him, the Kyuubi's chakra should be healing him normally now, right?" Sasuke gave her a dubious look before responding, "Of course." Ding. The elevator door opened, and they moved on down the corridor, their voices still low. "So why has he been wearing a bandage around his right wrist?" Raising his eyebrows, Sasuke asked, "What do you mean?" "He covers it. The only reason I've noticed is that he's been doing it for some time. You know, I questioned him about it in his response. A cut of paper." Shaking his head, Sasuke said, "He's a pathetic liar. But why would he do it in the first place? He's not good at hiding things at all." She agreed. "I realize it's none of my business, but I believe he's trying to act cool about things that happened while we weren't with him." However, he was slightly altered by something and both of them experienced high, alert tenseness as a crash sound sounded from around the corridor, as if a tray had been dropped and its contents had shattered on the floor. When the screaming followed, It became clear that this was not an accident but rather that something was seriously wrong. There was a sense of murderous intent. What? It was the way to their rooms, so the two hurried forward. Sasuke. Karen sped up and exclaimed, "I smell blood." He pushed his way through the crowd of workers, cursing, "Get out of here." "What is it?" he asked, grabbing the shoulder of a worker standing in front of the door and shaking it. "What took place?" The elderly woman exclaimed, "The blonde boy was attacked. He was lying on the bed exhausted one moment, and then he was avoiding a knife with blood all over the place." By the time Shisui finished telling his story, it was late. He told how he had survived the fall, how he had resurfaced despite having jumped, and how he had been unable to complete his suicide plans for reasons that were unknown to him at the time. Shisui had chalked it up to fate that he should not only find him, but that the teenager had the desire to make amends for the very wrongs of the village that he had attempted and failed to do so long ago. He briefly touched on how Naruto had found him and how he immediately realized that Naruto was the fourth Hokage's son. 1. Sasuke was unable to speak and was unable to look at the ground for most of his story. The older Uchiha friend's words were almost a jab at Sasuke's previous retaliation plans. They served as a reminder of his brother's actual mission, and they were accompanied by Naruto's insistence. However, nothing changed as a result. When it was finished, Sasuke closed his eyes, not knowing how to react. In the end, he managed to say something simple and interesting. "I am grateful you are still with us." With his fingers caressing Itachi's crow while his eye remained inside, Shisui's lips formed a gentle smile. "After a while, I finally learned to be thankful too," Shisui said. "If the jump had been successful, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet you all as adults. Regretfully, Itachi is no longer with us. I have a conversation with him." As he thought about this, Sasuke grinned grimly, recalling the past and wishing with all his might that he could go back in time for a single moment. He briefly pictured what might have happened if the massacre had never occurred, seeing Shisui laughing joyfully with his immediate family, Itachi smiling as well, his mother prodding him with the laundry basket and telling him to move, and his father. "I can just see that pouty look you used to give every time your brother became the topic," Shisui said, giving him a shoulder rub. The man laughed as Sasuke stammered, "I may be blind but there are some things that don't change." His laugh was light and pleasant, but it quickly subsided as he grew sober. "It's kind of refreshing in a way," he said. "However, ever since it all started, I've been able to read people more deeply because of this." "What do you mean?" "For example, at dinner earlier, the cup was abruptly dropped by the waiter." After a moment of introspection, Sasuke said, "It was an accident." "And reactionary." Sasuke's forehead furrowed. "Reactionary?" "He was too quiet, both before and after," Shisui said, nodding. "I waited for him to continue talking to Naruto after he dropped it. To tidy it up. However, he stood silently, and I could tell he was shocked. Hurried too fast out of there. Perhaps agitated." Shisui had noticed all that. Sasuke had chalked the annoyance off as a rookie error because it had all seemed so minor to him, but the more he considered it now, the more he realized that something was amiss. What had caused the employee to react, was the question. "Hey, remember that the group will be meeting later. Don't sleep, then." From the other side of the hotel door, Suigetsu's voice could hardly be heard, but it was loud enough to likely annoy his neighbors, if not the staff members wandering the corridors. "I refuse to." He responded with a call that was just as loud, if not louder. Wincing momentarily at his aching muscles, Naruto started stripping for his bath as soon as he realized the swordsman was gone. His brief sparring session with Suigetsu today had been incredibly exhausting. In fact, it was trying to match and outdo him that had become exhausting in so many ways. Not only was Suigetsu a master of the sword, but he was also a formidable obstacle due to his ability to transform into water to avoid serious damage. However, this practice would help him when he faced off against the oddball of nature, Zetsu, and the remaining members of the Akatsuki, Kisame and Obito. When he was done undressing, his clothes covered the blades that clattered against the linoleum floor. The only indications of battles not fading as usual were the scars that had healed without his chakra while he was imprisoned by the Akatsuki. He looked around his body for bruises before jumping in the bath, and while there were a few and a couple of nicks, they were gradually disappearing and returning to his normal tan skin tone thanks to his regenerative abilities. However, all but one of them had started to fade a little. Naruto fell to the bed after his soak, closing his eyes and letting out a long sigh as he was on the verge of fainting. He first became aware that something was amiss when he was stretched out. Kurama said, "I sense a deep hatred, Naruto." Naruto laughed at the remark, asking, "Who didn't hate him right now?" "Well, I've managed to tick off most everybody. Every single important political figure now knows my name and knows I'm going after them, he said, sinking into the enormous pillows. However, as Naruto turned to his side, he became restless and kicked the blankets down because he couldn't quite put his finger on what was wrong. He hates me even more now, you know, it's probably just Sasuke. The fox yelled, this is flavored with killing intent, do you not feel it? No doubt his enemies would come for him. Obito in particular was relishing in his plans to tear him to pieces before tearing Kurama from him, but it was too early. They would be fools not to prepare themselves for the force that was the last Jinchuriki beforehand, and they were no fools. Naruto giggled nervously, sensing any enemies that were even remotely close to the tower he was in. Nagato would have known even faster. You're just feeling Sasuke again. He would have known better if he hadn't been so tired and confident in himself, but his body and mind were in a state of exasperation, his eyes closing again, his breathing slowing, and he hardly noticed that an employee had entered to retrieve the towels from his bathroom. Hey, may I have a few extras? As a trained shinobi, even he knew better than to let himself go immediately, he called languidly, half asleep in the bed already, against Suigetsu's original plans. He had previously slept on grass, trees, and concrete, which only made the opulence of the bed more calming to his body. He was worried, sensing something was amiss, more strongly this time, when he did not receive a response from the man who was loitering in the restroom. Hello. Naruto, go. A sharp slice of pain ran along his twisting shoulder as he narrowly avoided the blade that was headed for his back. Oh no. Sensing danger and experiencing a surge of adrenaline, he twisted around completely, grabbed his attacker by the arm, and jerked the knife away from his wrist before kicking his knee into their torso. Of course, this move could have been easily blocked, but his position on the bed limited his range of motion, and to his surprise, the attacker took the full force of it with a startled and hurt grunt. It was obvious that the man had no sense of defense or retaliation. As they staggered to the ground, Naruto effortlessly subdued the assailant who had fallen on his stomach, face buried in the ground. Whoever it was, he apparently lacked the experience to stand up to him either. Hissing, Naruto straddled him with his legs, pinning his arms to the side, and after arresting him, he grabbed the man's hair and violently raised his head. Who are you? Who sent? He growled. The question caught in his throat as he saw the man's face. He recognized the face. Kai, he muttered, hoping it would only be a disguise that would be lifted, but no change or metamorphosis materialized. And that in and of itself irritated him since he was unable to understand it or see any rationality. He was the one who served the drinks at dinner. He had seen the hospital man alone, the one who cried to himself. He had a small silver trinket around his neck, a locket, the same one he had been holding previously. His cheeks were still wet. Nevertheless, he gave Naruto a monstrous glare. As Naruto stared at him in horror, that look froze time like a hot iron for a moment, but then reality returned to him, ending the moment. His shoulder throbbed suddenly, and he recalled falling to the side and groaning as the pain was extinguished by the adrenaline rush. He touched the area that hurt, and tilting his hand back up towards him, he saw a bright red drip down his fingers. It wasn't deep, but it hurt and was releasing what felt like a lot of blood. Dude, what's this about? With a hiss, he tossed the basic kitchen knife aside after taking a quick look at the one that had now spun next to the bed. Really? Even though he had previously been slashed by a variety of blades, weapons, kunai, needles, and even a few kusarigama, he was initially aiming the kitchen knife at his back, no less. Naruto. Karen's voice hurried over to him, and Sasuke's did the same. Avoid him. He gritted his teeth as they were torn apart and Naruto was pushed aside, caught by Karen, who wrapped her fingers around his bloody shirt until she located the source of all the blood. It's already healing, but you need to keep pressure on it, she said. Okay, fool. Continue to apply pressure there. You're dead, snarled Sasuke, who had wrenched the attacker to him and pressed his sword against the man's neck. The man simply closed his eyes, seemingly in agreement, without protesting when he heard this. Avoid it. Dang it, Naruto, it's not going to heal right, Naruto gasped, unable to be as accepting, and pushed away from Karen, disregarding her protests and not giving a damn about the cut or pressure. Don't what? Naruto, he died after attempting to kill you. No. Something was pushing Naruto beyond that urge, though, and the reason for the tangled words was partly that the boys were so agitated that anything would be subjected to the act of arguing and fighting between the two. Tears. There was more to this than a straightforward but futile attempt at assassination. If that's what it was, this man wasn't some heartless monster or enemy. Things became more chaotic as a result of Naruto's protests and the noise made by curious bystanders outside, and the man made no attempt to escape. Then, Paper rushed in, swirling like a tornado until it took the shape of a woman, Conan. She waved her hand and the door closed, allowing them to be alone. What does this signify? Her gaze swept over everyone before freezing on Sasuke, who was still holding his sword ready to cut the Rain civilian's throat, as she demanded. There was just an assassination attempt, Sasuke spit out, gesturing harshly to his captive, who is he working for? This time, she narrowed her eyes at the man and said, that man is just a civilian. A dead one. An act of insubordination deserving of execution is touching one of pain. Sama's allies. Sasuke's arm swung, ready. No, you don't have to. Naruto grabbed the blade, jerking it down before it could slice into its intended target. I'm fine, I swear. The punishment for murder, even failed attempts, assassinations, and espionage is death here, Naruto, and nothing less, Conan said, glaring at him sternly before narrowing her eyes and scanning the blood on him, tracking its path as the crimson made its way down his arm in hot rivulets, and then looking to the bed, reading what had happened herself. He is of the Rain, and people have died here for less. She grabbed the man's face, tilted his chin up towards her, and he lowered his gaze to the ground without saying anything. He knows this, she said. Therefore, it must be. She looked at Naruto after dropping his chin. With beseeching eyes, Naruto turned to face her, wanting to know. Just give me some time to sort things out, Conan. Before you guys do something that cannot be undone, I must know why. Pain will not approve. He also attempted to kill me, if my memory is correct. Do you wish to view the scars? Gritting her teeth, she said, that was different. Is it? With enormous rolls of paper in his arms, he entered the room, and Suigetsu smiled as he closed the door behind him with a foot. I got some. He called to the Taka, or rather, the people who were still there. Jugo was still absent, presumably attempting to learn how to manage his darker side. Good. The rolls rolled and spread out in a heap, some rolling away, and Karen started to reach for the scrolls when the swordsman abruptly stopped carrying them. The medic was unable to grab any of them. Suigetsu, damn you. She slapped him and barked. What? He threw up his hands and said, anyway, they were going to wind up all over the floor. These things are enormous. And the parchments were enormous, maps, to be exact, each fairly large. Carefully, both she and Suigetsu set to unrolling the maps and arranging them on the ground, using small rocks to hold the ends down and prevent them from curling. As they did so, the other two members sat quietly to themselves. Naruto and Sasuke. Even in their former isolation, the Rain village had such a wealth of its then enemies in their lands, and Karen insisted that all of them be carefully examined. The maps were provided by the Rain's Intel division and ranged from colorful climate, economic, and topographical maps to more straightforward political, road, and thematic maps and charts. You started a war, she added, glaring at Naruto. We really need to get to business. What specifically do you intend to do? Whoever initiates contact will have the upper hand. Either you or someone else will do it. In response, Naruto merely rubbed his shoulder while staring blankly. Karen pushed her glasses up and knelt over the largest map, asking, anyway, what exactly is the course we're taking? Sasuke just glared at the wall, while Suigetsu shrugged. Naruto. She called, and he stared out the window, unresponsive, despite the fact that she had called his name rather loudly. Sasuke's refusal to assist simply left the person who started this whole mess, and he was acting similarly obstinate, albeit unintentionally. Hey, come on. Earth to Naruto, Suigetsu said, laughing and tapping his knee. Get up, friend. What? Just how exactly are we doing this, Naruto? You still haven't provided us with a coherent plan, Karen reiterated, pointing to the map and placing her finger on the Rain. Oh. He moved slowly beside her and across the map, then he grabbed a thick marker and held it above the paper. After a brief pause, he drew a big circle that covered almost the whole world in a clockwise direction. We follow this path. That it? Snorted Suigetsu. Yeah. Karen's eyes rolled. A circle? That's far too ambiguous, Naruto. Look, I understand that you and I are both exhausted, but we must be aware of our next course of action. His expression was blank once more, as if he were not in the same room. This isn't helping us at all. It's a grave error. No. He shook his head and rubbed his face. I apologize, guys. He closed his eyes and said, I do have a plan, it's just. Why did he do it? The way he gazed upon me. The servant had no martial arts training and was neither a ninja nor a trained shinobi, so why would he attack a skilled shinobi in public? Why? He was only able to whisper. Let's just do this in the morning, okay. Karen sighed. Get some rest, you moron. Yeah. He practically flew out of there after saying that. Suigetsu turned to Karen after staring at the door in disbelief and saying, "Well, that was weird." Karen's dark eyebrows raised, and she glanced at Sasuke, who had been sitting in the corner. He was silent, but his eyes told her that he had been paying attention the entire time. As the clock struck midnight, they departed one by one as the sound of rain filled the surrounding area. He had been put in solitary not because he had caused officers any trouble, no, he was oddly well behaved and submissive, but rather to keep him safe from the other prisoners, who were primarily vicious and battle-hardened ninjas, the kind of men who had ended up in Konoha bingo books. The ninja of the village only had to look at what happened to Hanzo to understand that the slaughter would always be a burden on those who knew pain to be their ruler. The Reign's previous systems had always placed both shinobi and civilians in the same jail, frequently in the same cell. Naruto hoped that as the village moved away from a dictatorship, this and the Reign's legal system would change. The small, dimly lit cell had a pain-standing guard outside, and he would keep doing so with his fingers constantly wrapped around a rod. Whether he was well behaved or not, the man was a dead man to Nagato, and he was the Reign's executioner. "Hold on while I work this out," Pain had stated. His name is Akio, prior to granting Naruto entry to the cell. Nagato claims that Akio had spent his entire life in the Reign, without any contact with other villages or groups, married a local a few years ago, and was now going to spend the rest of his life in this cell. Flies buzzed around the cell's basic features, which included a small bathroom area and a thin slab of board that was chained to the wall and used as a cot. Akio sat on it with several cuffs locked around his limbs and belt, and a dejected expression on his face as he knitted his fingers together. Both in his room and at the hospital, Naruto could still see the tears streaming down his face as he closed his eyes. He desired to know, to comprehend. "What made you do it?" Naruto, who disliked looking at bars and didn't particularly enjoy cells, asked softly while maintaining a downward gaze. He felt that there was more to the man's sad turn of events than his pitiful attempt on Naruto's life after recalling his tears. "What made you attempt my murder?" Naruto said it again. The man glared at the floor without saying anything. "They were going to kill you for it. Pain still desires to. You're only alive because of me." This time, he forced himself to sound authoritative and firm. "Answer me, Akio. Why me?" Silence. The man did, however, move slightly, as though he was about to say something but refrained. "Did someone else give you orders? Was money involved? You'll have to tell Pain if you don't tell me, and you are well aware of how brutal his methods can be. And you're a fool if you're with the man in the mask. He does no good." At last, the man answered, but he refused to even look at Naruto. "I chose to do it." He spoke in a tired, broken voice. "I would never be bought with money." "So why? You," he croaked. "Me? You are the Kyuubi. Yesterday, I heard it. You were it." Sasuke's words. "That was our original deal, Naruto," followed by Naruto recalling the dinner from that day. "You assured us that you would take advantage of the Kyuubi within you." At that moment, the cup in Akio's hand slipped and broke into pieces. And then that presence he'd felt later on, and why the look he had given Naruto hurt so much. Now everything came together. It was the same expression of fear and hatred that the people in Konoha had given him. He was loathed to the core by this man. It was something Naruto didn't like feeling and certainly wasn't accustomed to outside Konoha. Let alone these days at all. Naruto responded, "But I'm not the Kyuubi," adding that I'm merely his host. "You get it? Although I have complete control over my actions, I carry him inside of me. Additionally, he has never harmed you or this village." The poor man laughed harshly until it sounded like a cry, and then he caught his breath and opened his fist to reveal the silver locket he had worn earlier. The necklace contained a picture of a woman's face, and the other showed a toddler's face with a big smile on her tiny lips. They were beautiful, not ostentatious, but a modest kind of beauty. "Are they members of your family?" "Yes. I gave this locket to my wife at first, and now it's all I have left. Images from the past, and it's because of you." Naruto furrowed his brow and said, "What are you discussing? They wanted you when we were attacked." His voice broke and his eyes squeezed shut as if he couldn't bear to speak anymore. But yet he did, drawing every word from his hatred, letting it fuel his otherwise broken self. "My wife, concrete had buried her, and my little girl." Feelings gnawed at him, lurking in the pit of his stomach, his heart. Naruto shifted uneasily, sensing where this was going, and he didn't want to hear it. He wasn't indifferent, but he couldn't take it. "The body of my darling little girl simply could not handle it any longer. This morning, she passed away at the hospital. My little girl has been lying there in agony for weeks. I made an effort to work on the side, but it was insufficient to cover the surgeries she required. Her little system just wasn't recovering. She was terrified, he said, sobbing as he spoke. Do you have any idea how it feels to assure a young child that everything will be okay when the harsh reality is that she is dying? That she will not even have the opportunity to live a complete life? Daddy, where's mommy? Were her final instructions. And I was unable to respond to her at all. And it's all because the apartment they were in was destroyed by the jutsu of a Konoha shinobi. I should have joined them, but the Kyuubi are solely to blame. Then. Weakened Pain could only do so much, and Naruto flinched, imagining the demands made during the attack by the Kyuubi or their village. It should have been clear that Naruto would have fought back and attempted to remove a few of the Rinnegan eyes as the least he could do while they were preventing him from accessing his chakra, but that aspect of the mess was his fault. However, this whole situation with Nagato was caused by Konoha's actions during the last war, right? Naruto nearly felt guilty about being a part of the cruelty of the shinobi cycle until he realized that he was here to try to change it for this man, his family, and everyone else impacted by the vicious cycles. My condolences for your loss. I confess that when I had been captured earlier, I had rendered some of the pains useless. However, if I could have, I would have immediately stopped the attack. If I had been aware sooner, I swear I would have talked the head of Konoha out of it. It is irrelevant, it is still the Kyuubi's fault. You caused them pain, and they were my entire world. Naruto grasped the bars and shook his head, saying, listen to me. I didn't do it, I apologize for what transpired, but they wouldn't have returned if I had been killed. You were aware that you wouldn't succeed in topping it. Why did you do it, then? Because I want to die, he growled. I wanted to be put to death for my crimes and hurt you for what you've done. You had to take away my death as well, even though that was my intended outcome. He really wanted to be executed. Naruto blinked in disbelief, recalling how he had not objected when Sasuke was just inches away from cutting his throat. You're not the only one who's lost, Akio, so pay attention. My sensei, who was the closest thing to family to me, was killed by pain. Yeah, it hurt. However, I recovered, and now that we're both here, we're both getting over it. You can too. Losing your own flesh and blood, your own beloved, is far worse than your own suffering. And my Chihiro, my girl, she was just a toddler. What you did is still not justified by that. Even though I don't yet have a daughter, the prospect of my wife getting hurt would be enough to make me act or make irrational decisions, but I know better. I wouldn't have permitted myself to exacerbate it. Nothing you did would have been helpful, only caused you more suffering. All the man could do was shake his head. It ought to have killed me. I wouldn't see them again until then. Why, then, did you snoop on that affair? Why put me through this more torture? That isn't how it operates. A dead man has no value. With his hands trembling in their restraints, he stood angrily and said, as a shinobi, if you truly care about other people's well-being, give me that mercy. Please act swiftly. I've already endured enough suffering from my loss. Naruto shook his head once more. One day, the man prevented him from finishing, and Naruto was forced to turn away while repeatedly whispering, I'm sorry, knowing that it was not heard. One of the guards had to enter to sedate him. Distressed, he hardly noticed the pain as it gripped his arm. Naruto, the voice said, even you can't reach some hearts. You ought to have kept him to yourself. He shook Pain's hand away and said sourly, no, but I can't give up. I mean, why am I at fault here? What's the point of simply letting someone die? Why should he receive the treatment that Obito and that Black Zetsu deserve when he is not some psychopath who has lost all humanity? Is he unable to see that he can overcome this? To live for them. It doesn't have to end. Once you're dead, you can't get back. But was it really better to make him stay alive? Naruto, you will have to come to terms with the fact that sometimes there is nothing you can do. That man won't be the first to refuse your assistance. Nothing you do will change the fact that some people will always be unsalvageable because they will refuse assistance. What else am I meant to do then? Not satisfied, he insisted. Just as I once believed in my own answer, you should come to that one, and if you wish to bring about real peace, you will need to find yours, the right one. If a cage was exactly like him, how would you respond? But it's different, Naruto said, flinching. He is merely a man, a dad. Naruto, you can't save everyone. This is something you have to accept. Nature has things that are larger than you, larger than we are. As he muttered, maybe, but I can't give up. The only thing I can do is to keep trying. They must have slept through the longest night of their lives because they were so anxious about tomorrow. Sasuke wasn't an exception. He had spent the majority of the night sitting on the edge of his bed thinking deeply. He had made a few rounds of the city, specifically Pain's Tower, and Naruto's unexpected alliance still bothered him. They had passed each other in the shadows without exchanging words, knowing that Sasuke could intercept with Nagato's core body if he so desired. As morning arrived, He found himself in the hotel lobby with Karen, who sat on one of the window-facing couches and drank tea from a rather elaborate teacup. The former Akatsuki woman also sat there, and it seemed that they were talking about Nagato and Naruto, with Suigetsu likely restocking on supplies for their journey that was to start that day, based on what Naruto had mentioned at dinner the day before. Sasuke sat on the couch across from the women and started eating a quick breakfast of bread and rice. As he ate, he noticed a plant on the table between them. It was a traditional orange pot with thick blades sticking out. However, it was the name painted on the pot that caught his attention, not the aloe vera plant itself. The name Uki.kun 2 was written in large letters on it. It seems that Naruto acquired a new pet for himself. Karen said, "He's still bothering me," after Conan gave her a friendly bow and took her away after an awkward silence between the three of them. "There is a problem." "What?" He blinked. "Naruto," she replied, taking another sip. She then carefully placed the cup on the table, picked up a smaller one that was filled with clear liquid, and watered Uki.kun 2, who had been sitting there since the break of day. It's simply unsettling. When she gestured to the window, Sasuke looked curiously out and saw a figure kneeling over a nearly floating slab of broken concrete in the distance. "He's been there for hours," she said, gesturing to him to go check on him as though this was also a continuation of their interrupted conversation from the previous evening. "He's trying to act calm, but something changed him a little and things happened while we weren't with him." Sasuke exhaled softly, realizing that they had to talk. It would be wise to break him out of his emotional coma while he was at it. "All right. I'll be back." A worn copy of Jiraiya's book was in his hands, and for a moment it appeared as though he had sunk it into the dark surface to sink. He was sitting, kneeling, on a huge crack of concrete that was surrounded by water. Flowers had been placed on the concrete and on the surface of the water, and the white flowers in the water bobbed up and down, tapping against the stone. Sasuke realized that this was a memorial. He stood silently behind Naruto, waiting for him to finish. Naruto moved, putting a hand around his wrist that was holding the book, and whispered, "This is where Jiraiya Sensei died, Sasuke." He somehow sensed him and knew that Sasuke was behind him. Unexpectedly, his senses were sharper than before, and Sasuke wasn't sure if that was because he was in a state of meditation or because he had a closer connection to the fox spirit, a consequence of his sage mode. Jiraiya was a master, but Sasuke had never known him more than that. He hadn't given a damn, hadn't paid much attention, and wouldn't now. Those condolences were better spent elsewhere. Sasuke moved to stand next to him without bothering to kneel. "I see. I wanted to give him a proper memorial," Naruto said, rubbing his nose. "He was my godfather," he said, clutching his beloved book tightly. "You know, a burial with this but... And he was killed right here. This very moment. And I'm willing to wager that he would still be here if I had known. If they had simply told me. Or perhaps I would have accompanied him. He didn't have to be by himself." The book trembled. "However, I have to finish this and his mission. I now have your brothers as well." "That's not yours to take. He gave it to me, Sasuke." The Uchiha nearly frowned as he closed his mouth. "And I'm accepting it." He closed his eyes and shook his head, saying, "You'd think it'd be easier for me to say goodbye before I do though, but... they're connected anyway." "I'm not prepared." When Sasuke said, "Then don't." Kami is aware that he had not laid his kin to rest and would never do so. He would be their demon and use the Uchiha's power to cause them as much hell as possible before he took them there. Only after Danzo and the elders had been buried and after they had endured all of the torture they had inflicted on his brother and clan. His fingers tightened around his arm as Naruto's body sagged even more, and he whispered to the dead, barely audible. "I will not fail once more. If I have anything to say about it, and I will, no one else will suffer. I will not allow anyone else to be harmed, not even shinobi like you or Akio." This is easier said than done. You are only one person, and a fool at that. With half-open eyes, Naruto sat up and said, "Shut up, Sasuke." This was the end of his time here. Naruto started putting his book away, and Sasuke moved aside to give him room. Naruto turned away from the grave marker, his eyes wet, and wiped them with his shirt sleeves while laughing in embarrassment. Though he knew Sasuke wouldn't have, he paused and said, "Stupid Rain. You didn't see me like this, deal?" With an indifferent shrug, Sasuke made the gesture. He retreated farther from the grave and remarked, "You know, Sasuke, you're the only one I haven't heard back from." "On what?" "The entire thing. Alongside the cage. Pursuing them. Obito, too. Danzo as well." "I haven't." He sneered. "Well, are you with me? Nagato and Shisui are. Even your group." A hard line formed in Sasuke's mouth. "Sasuke, tell me. Are you going to support us? Sasuke's grin was almost imploring. Naruto was the one in need of his assistance. You have the largest ego in the universe, and I am aware that we have disagreements. However, you are as much in need of this as I am. I'm perfectly capable of going after Danzo myself. Perhaps, but you are aware that it goes far deeper than that. His followers will strike back, and the cycle will never end until you pass away. We must therefore work together to accomplish this. According to you, he shot back, doubtfully. With a frustrated shake of his head, Naruto asked, do I need to prove myself to you first? Is that it? Why do you think I must be a part of your grand scheme? That's just asking for trouble. Sasuke shot him a warning glance. My team is the Taka. It's not your job to lead. All right, Naruto sighed. Let's resolve it the only way we appear to be able to. Fight me. Pardon me? You can start a fight, like on the roof of that hospital long ago, but not me? Fight me, I said. Sasuke mocked him, saying that he would gladly beat him to the ground if necessary, but they both knew that Naruto wasn't the kind to give up easily after losing. And the winner? You assist me if I win, and when I say we do, we take care of Danzo. I make the decisions. No, all right, even then, we'll work together as partners. No, yes. Sasuke skipped ahead because Naruto would repeat himself for hours, and if I win? Do as you please. Don't expect full submission, though, from anybody. This also applies to Konan and Nagato. Are you threatening me? Naruto smirked. Am I? I simply know that I will no longer be a lapdog. Take that as you will. We fight, so it must be farther away from here, he said, pointing to the city's outer limits. There have been enough battles in this village. It's settled then. Before we take off, I need to stretch my legs. As you can see, I've changed from the person I was before. To Sasuke's utter surprise, Naruto had disappeared. He was trying to prove himself, huh? His lips curled in a sneer of amusement, and his fingers were encircling the hilt of his blade. Still a failure. One who was unable to hide from Uchiha, particularly after implanting Itachi's eyes, which, without the slightest effort, turned deep crimson. They cautiously scanned the dark beams of the incomplete towers surrounding him, finding many exposed frames that made for an intriguing battlefield that Naruto had selected. He was not your typical shinobi, however, as his Sharingan almost immediately identified the direction of the attacks. He's okay with it. 1, 2, 3. 3 behind me, 1 from the side, and 1 from above. 5 different forms of Naruto, each with an equal amount of chakra. Naruto would try to be clever by hiding among the clones because he was so rash, but Sasuke knew him, and once one knew him, he was no longer unpredictable, making him easier to defeat. And Sasuke's time was running out. It was fortunate that Naruto recovered quickly because he moved silently along the dark shadows of the skeleton frames, slowly drawing out his blade. Otherwise, this might be lethal. Without making a sound, he turned abruptly and slashed at the approaching ambush, cutting through their sides and into each of them by a good half-foot. However, instead of blood, he received puffs of smoke, shadows, of course. But more were on the way. He swung his fist up, Chidori laughing on it, just as the last form was falling on him, and the blonde was flung across the ground, writhing. The moment had come. Sasuke's eyes whirled, ready for a genjutsu to trap him in and quickly complete his pitiful attempt, when he was suddenly flung forward by a sharp blow from behind, electricity exploding through his own body. What? After a moment of struggle, he managed to summon his Chidori stream to cancel out the outside current, and his body sparked with his own current, the pain fading. Wincing, he forced his legs to move as well, to get up. Hissing, he forced his fingers to move again, the movement almost impossible due to the burning sensation of the electricity. He was recuperating when he noticed it, another clone. The blonde in front of him vanished in a puff. Sasuke jerked around, his fists balled, while Naruto stood far away with his bow in his hands. Since he was now visible in the open and had no other arrow ready, Naruto flicked the weapon down until it snapped into a thick blade shape. Sasuke was frustrated and took the arrow from his side, looking at it to see what had shocked him. He saw a piece of mechanics attached to the end of it that was designed to function as a kind of taser. How do you feel about my homemade Chidori? Of course, it still can't compete with jutsu, Naruto called, while putting his weapon in an offensive stance and smiling broadly. Sasuke rushed towards him, hands joining to form the rat seal, then twisting through the other signs with lightning speed before forming the final seal with quick fury. Naruto had only revealed his true position. What a fool. That's not what I would do if I were you. Not that Sasuke would have taken the warning seriously anyhow, but his cry was too late. Instead of simply erupting from his lips, his fire exploded, its heat burning into him. In the meantime, Naruto literally vanished, his strange teleporting jutsu sweeping him away from the danger in less than a heartbeat, and the entire plane of concrete seemed to have caught fire, as if his just you had backfired and been thrown back at him instead. Heat rushed and burned the air furiously, forcing him to take higher ground and stare at the wild flames dancing below. As Sasuke's mind raced with the heat, he thought, there's no reason why my jutsu should have malfunctioned like that. He also detected a certain scent in the air. Before he summoned his flames, the battlefield had been rigged with oil. But how? Sasuke would have known long before the oil covered the area. Ah, he knew now. Naruto's clones. They must have had some on them that was released when they vanished, and the rain would have also messed with his sense of smell. The flames released thick plumes of smoke inside a structure, but most of the interior was exposed to several shafts that were pierced by rain. Sasuke grinned to himself as he covered his mouth and nose with his collar. Naruto was using tools and fields that he usually didn't, demonstrating resourcefulness for the first time. Sasuke actually felt challenged for the first time in a long time, but it ended here. Naruto would run out of tricks and be too self-confident for wearing Sasuke out without doing anything. Sasuke was far superior in close range tactics, and Naruto would be blinded by his own smoke, so he would make his first move while the smoke was still covering the area, as any ninja worth their salt would know to do. He knew that Naruto would attack him quickly, and he met his weapon with a clang. He struck the other person's blade, causing them to leap apart and start circling one another like vultures. Sasuke, who was doing well to focus on Sasuke, said, "You have improved," his eyes tracking every move of Naruto's. "But it doesn't make up for your stupidity." When Naruto heard Sasuke's voice, he howled in rage and swung his blade in its direction, but Sasuke was just in time to block it. He went on, blocking the next blow. "You're not prepared for war because you're too prone to your emotions, Naruto. For a real shinobi's life. To leave your fantasy and enter the actual world. Away from the defensive walls of Konoha." He saw that Naruto was fighting with his eyes closed as the smoke surrounding them started to dissipate as they traded blows. It appears that he briefly trained with Shisui as well. Sasuke could see and feel the blonde's chakra heighten as he opened them, and as he did so, a yellow hue appeared in his irises and an orange hue spread out from around his eyes. He grinned and gripped his sword tighter, and they continued to dance at an even faster pace, with each blow being more powerful than the last, particularly Naruto's. In addition to his increased attack force, he knew how to take advantage of the fact that his bow's frame, when compressed into a single unit, was heavier than Sasuke's thin blade. "Maybe I'm not fully ready, but it's enough," he said in an angry voice. Sasuke gritted his teeth and pushed his head to the side, just a strong but restrained Rasengan attached to the wall where his face had been, as Naruto pushed forward and he felt his back hit metal with a harsh wham. He punched, hard, his teeth gnashing. To divert Naruto's attention, he launched his knee up in his Sage mode, but Sasuke wasn't finished yet. When he had enough space, he slashed his blade up, and it caught Naruto's special blade and launched it into the air, spinning, landing and clattering to a beam roughly 5 stories above them. Naruto looked up and hissed. Then the race started, with Sasuke thrusting his palm to the metal exterior, lighting the entire frame with his lightning. Naruto then slid back down, cursing, and ran to the side, reaching for an offhand pole, which he thrust into the ground, braced with both hands, and spun around, building momentum to send himself flying feet first into Sasuke, catching him in the stomach with insane speed. They both skidded and landed in the street, as well as the torrential rain. Sasuke would probably electrocute both of them to excessive lengths that weren't worth it in a straightforward fight like this if he used his Chidori in the pouring rain that was occurring right now. He still had other jutsu, though, and even though Naruto spent most of it with his eyes closed to avoid using genjutsu. Although Sasuke had far more experience with swords than Naruto, and his grip was firm, his thoughts were interrupted when Naruto attacked him with his pole, catching his blade this time and almost throwing it from his hands. Pushing forward to gain more force, he tore it through the air, severing Naruto's makeshift spear clean into 2 parts. Naruto, who was momentarily stunned, just picked up the other part and used both rods as if nothing had happened. He was using both of them in a flurry of continuous attacks, losing his breath as he pushed forward while panting. Anyone else would have been exhausted by now, but Uzumaki had stamina that was nothing to laugh at. Maybe Sasuke shouldn't have ridden him off so early in the fight, as it was costing him dearly. "I haven't given up on the world like you have, Sasuke." Sasuke was forced to jump away to safety after Naruto yanked on a wire he had not previously noticed, causing a wave of explosions to erupt all around him. He swore angrily. The clone that had been held off to the side all this time must have landed where Naruto had expected him to because a blow from behind knocked Sasuke to his knees, and he grunted in frustration as he landed, holding Naruto's bow. Blade millimeters from his throat. I win. Son of a. This was something he had planned from the start. He knelt down and prodded his forehead, his eyes oddly red but uncontrolled by the Kyuubi. You see Sasuke, he said, I didn't start this war to fight. Sasuke's forehead furrowed in clear understanding. I'm not the same genin I used to be because of the way Naruto was not only persuaded but also went to the trouble of setting everything up, sparring with everyone he could. There's more to it. There is, of course. I'm not as big of a fool as everyone thinks I am. Like you, I believe that in order to achieve my objectives, I must better myself. I want access to the village's archives, you see. Pushing himself away from the blade aimed at him, Sasuke grinned and said, that's illegal. Not entirely. I'm just borrowing their scrolls, and such knowledge was stolen from others. Just like Konoha did with the scroll Mizuki made me take, they will get it back. Furthermore, since Jiraiya is no longer with me, I need more than I currently have if I want to get stronger. The rest of my training will have to be done by me. I also want to learn as much as I can. That's the only way I can eliminate Obito and his other forces. With just what I currently have, I've come this far. However, it is insufficient. I'm tired of this world being destroyed. I'm tired of being asked questions that have no answers. I need to find the answers now. It is time for a new era to begin. His words were, that's why I need you, partner. He withdrew the rod. Shaking his head, Sasuke said, you're insane. With a smile and an offering hand, he said, no, I'm the #1 unpredictable, hyperactive, show-off ninja. In front of the Taka, Nagato, and Konan at the meeting table, Naruto declared boldly, so, this is the order I have decided on. Cloud, mist, sand, stone. And then the leaf, this time speaking confidently, with Sasuke sitting directly next to him. In this circle, I will go after the cage and speak with him individually. I'd like access to their archives as well. I'll have what I need to eliminate Kabuto and Obito thanks to the collective wisdom of the villages. But it won't be easy to gather them, Karen said, nodding. Villages are particularly resource-savvy, particularly in the present day. A smile curved Naruto's lips as he said, it will only make the challenge more enjoyable. In addition, ninjas are experts at spying, isn't that correct? Yeah, mumbled Karen. But what of those in direct opposition, Naruto? Konan asked, biting her lip and shaking her head. How would you approach them initially? Obito now realizes that we are all against him, but we were able to destroy his belongings beforehand, Naruto grinned. Although he is now partnered with Kabuto, who still has all of Orochimaru's garbage, this would be beneficial for us. In order for me to become strong enough to defend the populace, I need to learn as much as I can from the various villages before we launch our real campaign to win the cage over. Get on with it, complained Sasuke. All right. In any case, we must cut Kabuto down a peg or two before we can accomplish all of that. Before the lightning arrives, we will arrive at the sound, destroy his supplies, and shut down any systems or traffic that are still coming from Orochimaru's lot. After that, Obito and Kabuto will have to put any plans on hold while they recuperate and replenish their supplies. We should have more time to deal with the cage as a result. Additionally, it will be very difficult to locate us as long as we are moving and using guerrilla tactics. Suigetsu clicked his tongue as Nagato's puppet gave him an incredulous look. That actually sounds tactically smart, Suigetsu said. Guerrilla warfare? I'm impressed that you thought of that. I'm not an idiot, guys. Sasuke remarked somewhat doubtfully, so, we hit the sound first, although he appeared to nod in agreement with Naruto's plan. You must, however, be psychologically ready for it. The Konoha you know is not at all like the sound. That's for sure. Konoha's biggest boy scout, Karen chirped. I know that it's not like Konoha, he said with a grumble. I mean, this city ain't either and it ain't bothering me. Yeah, but the sound is a place where it's not just structurally different, but trafficking of all kinds is the accepted normal, Suigetsu said with a somber laugh. It thrives on violent takeovers by various groups in the black market. A daimyo once ruled the area, but after Orochimaru passed away, rivals fought to succeed him and eventually seize control of the whole territory. Since then, he has gone missing. Most likely in a gutter. Or that's the rumor, anyway. Exactly what sort of trafficking are we talking about? Asked Naruto, rubbing his head. Almost everything. This is what Orochimaru lived for, and man, are you going to experience some culture shock. You'll be sobbing to your mother as you rush home. Glaring at him, Naruto said, Stop Suigetsu. I am not a child. You can bet that I'll bring it all down as well, and I can handle it. Now that their meeting was officially over, he got up to go, grabbed his crow, and started attaching a little piece of paper to its leg. I better send this guy out first. he said firmly, giving it a stroke, Konoha. Before flapping its wings, the bird squawked. As he stood up and stretched, Suigetsu laughed and said, "Sending that chick of yours a love message?" Naruto said, disgustingly, "Don't call her that. Her name is Hinata. Hyuga. Namikaze." Karen laughed and said, "Yeah right, oh, that reminds me. You mentioned that you had a wife when you were speaking with that man. There's a little bit of imagination there." Lovely, so they had overheard him. It's not. Consult Shisui. Oh my god, why did Suigetsu have to start this? I went home after Nagato released me, and kind of. Blood rushed to his face, heating it like pepper. Karen began, "You didn't," with a nervous laugh, he said, "I did." Suigetsu deadpanned, "Oh my gosh, he's not dying a virgin after all." Conan grimaced as Naruto hurled a scroll at his head, saying, "I'm starting to regret this." Karen looked at Sasuke in disbelief and tried her best to ignore the boys. But aren't the Hyuga this big deal clan like the Uchiha? Are marriages outside the clan permitted? No, turning to face Naruto, Karen said sharply, she could get in trouble, cutting off his and Suigetsu's argument. "You can't just do whatever you want. Naruto, you should be an adult by now." "Are you in trouble?" "Yes." "Whoa, that hadn't even occurred to me. I don't even want to think about her father, and Neji is going to kill me. And I left her alone to deal with it," he cried in panic as his hands sprinted for his face. "Oh my goodness, I hadn't even considered it. I'm sorry, but I have to leave. I promise I'll be back before dusk. After that, we can go to the sound." "Hold on, Naruto." It was too late when Sasuke called. The Uchiha moaned in frustration when Naruto vanished, saying, "I despise him. I genuinely do. He couldn't continue like that. He's something else," Suigetsu said, laughing. She curled her arms to herself for warmth when she woke up, but when she realized they were empty and she was alone, she shivered. This was normal under normal conditions. Not this morning, though. Not this morning. She inhaled deeply, raised her fingers, and then trailed them down until they found and wrapped around the main piece, glossing over the cool pearls around her neck. A round cut stone that is orange, she also grinned. "It was made from my DNA, he had stated. Therefore, if you'll have me, I can always come to you, even if we're apart." With her fingers clenched around her wedding present and her heart full of hope, she closed her eyes. There was a whoosh of his chakra, or air and sensations, and then he was falling on a hard floor, feeling sick. Naruto took in his surroundings, forced himself not to get sick, and caught his breath after a moment. He had never been in the Hyuga estate more than once, when he had discovered her and spirited her away for that brief moment. He would never have been permitted to go there as a child, even if he had had a valid reason to do so. In Konoha, the Hyugas were treated like kings and queens. He felt extremely self-conscious due to the shock of feeling as though he was in a palace, especially in comparison to his tiny apartment. He stood up quickly and attempted to brush off any dirt that might have been on his clothes and straighten them. In the meantime, his eyes kept flitting about. He was surrounded by traditional designs, and everything in it, including the floorboards and furniture, was made of high-quality materials and shouted of a long-standing heritage. He was even more amazed by the fact that he had someone from this background who loved him, in relation to her. He looked around and whispered, "Hinata," but he couldn't see her. Rather, he discovered that the room he was in was completely empty of people, and the only indication of a personal belonging was a simple oriental box with a sunflower and a bird painted on it. He approached the lone box out of curiosity. When Hinata wasn't in this room, why had he teleported there, unless she had assured him that she would never abandon it? However, his suspicions were validated when he opened the box. Worried, he took the necklace from it. Was it not to her liking? He bit his lip in thought. "I thought I saw a foreign chakra suddenly appear." He jumped and spun around when he heard the stranger's voice. "Oh." Suspicious pale eyes gazed at him. "Oh, I'm sorry." He let the necklace fall into the floor. His voice trailed off, "I'm not a thief or anything." The man looked familiar. He should be aware that it's a Hyuga. Then it dawned on him. The necklace had been placed specifically in this room, far from Hinata, by this man. You're..." Another person entered the room, almost bumping in on him in his hurry, before he could finish. "Just as I thought," the newcomer spat, observing who was inside and how their mere presence created an intense aura in the air. Neji. Neji's Byakugan eyes narrowed as he glared at him. He was dressed in the branch family's traditional attire rather than his typical mission attire. Seeing Neji in his own home was strange. Seeing him without his masked cool was even stranger. Rather, he had an angry expression. A great deal of rage. "Hey Neji." Naruto rubbed his head and whispered sheepishly. He was unable to say, "And Mr. Hyuga." Sorry for the intrusion. He had a question for Hinata, but Neji is staring at me as if he were trying to murder me. Boy, oh boy. He had no idea where to start. I apologize for stealing your heiress. Let me handle him, Hiyashi. Sama, Neji said, glaring at Naruto motionless while his voice was tight and extremely controlled. Neji strode toward Naruto and took his arm in a hard vice grip before he could say anything. Seething with rage, he pulled Naruto along with him to the door, seemingly guiding him to a location where he would talk about what had happened. He was so furious that, after pushing the door aside, he jerked it off its track. Naruto began to defend himself by saying, "It's not as bad as it seems," but Neji simply laughed and scoffing. He heard Hinata's father say, "Don't kill him, Neji," from behind him. Boy, ooh. He had said, "Don't kill him, don't murder him." Neji was not going to kill him, of course. First, he was going to completely skin him alive. As Hinata sat up and wiped the sleep from her eyes, she felt a rush of coolness wash over her exposed skin. She was momentarily taken aback and hastily raised the sheet to conceal herself. She clung more tightly to her covering as her cheeks burned a fiery crimson last night. Naruto. There was nothing but the golden, red light of the rising sun shining through the beams surrounding the long, forgotten temple. The smell of morning was swimming in that light, along with a soft conversation. For a brief moment, Hinata basked in the knowledge that Naruto was still with her. Her new partner and her idol. She wasn't by herself, no longer. She tied her cover, got to her feet, and followed his gentle voice. To whom was he speaking? Kurama? She felt a connection, a door opened to her, and she realized then that Naruto also had the fox spirit inside him after he had spirited her away and opened up to her, accepting and returning her feelings, and claiming her as his own on their first real night together. She acknowledged him, and the fox did the same. He had even said it. A caution. Neither would he be the first. Naruto? WH? He was outside, leaning against the wall of the temple. She started to speak to him but stopped when she saw a figure standing in front of her lover. She took a step back right away, blushing and tensing her fingers on her sheet. Naruto turned to her and grinned after sensing and hearing her behind him. "You're up. Sorry if we woke you." Who is that man? I have to go. And she would have, if Naruto hadn't glued her to her spot with his hand firmly on her shoulder. "I want you to meet someone." With a slight flush and a warm smile on his face, he carefully wrapped his jacket around her shoulders as a cool breeze blew through them. Embarrassed, she nodded her thanks and accepted it with gratitude before turning back to face the visitor. Naruto looked at her reassuringly as she swallowed nervously. Then she understood why. Upon closer examination, she noticed that the stranger's eyes were covered in bandages that resembled a blindfold. The stranger with the dark hair stood with his fingers encircling the nearby railing. "So this is the heiress," he said, turning his face to where she had been. She realized that this man was blind. Naruto responded as though he could hear the questions racing through her mind. She became even more perplexed when he added, "Uchiha," after saying, "This is Shisui." Uchiha. A long-time friend of Sasuke's. Immediate family. His skills with the Sharingan were unparalleled, which is why he's been living here in hiding from Danzo ever since the massacre. No, since before then. I found him a short time ago here. This temple is his home now. Oh. She gave him another look. His warm smile was accompanied by a tired expression that made it impossible to tell how old he was. In addition to his condition, a fugitive must have endured a great deal to live on the run. "Shisui, this is Hinata," Naruto went on. This time, he was as shy as she always seemed to be. "That, girl I told you about." It was somewhat relieving. Shisui taunted, "You mean the woman you've decided to elope with? Although, I'm not sure you get the concept of it," which only made the Uchiha laugh. Naruto responded with an embarrassed shout. Hinata soon realized that this man was not at all like the Uchiha she knew because of his laugh. She was aware that the Uchiha were strong and frequently aloof in their pride in their clan. But not him. His mannerisms and attitude were more akin to Naruto's than Sasuke's. Unlike Sasuke, she didn't feel uncomfortable around him. On the other hand, unlike Sasuke, he had not attempted to murder Naruto. He was a true Konoha citizen, anyway, before Danzo took over. With a nod, Shisui moved forward and bowed to Hinata. "Regardless my teasing, I am honored to be in the presence of the Hyuga clan's heiress." "Thank you, and it is good to know there are more survivors from the massacre." She didn't want to make the man uncomfortable by talking about it, but she felt that being a blind fugitive was anything but pleasant. Shisui gave a nod. "Yes, and I know the path ahead will not be easy if you are to be with Naruto. But after knowing what happened to the Hyuga not too many years ago, the lightning incident, I believe it's the right thing. Never allow for your clan to end up in the same position mine had. Hinata gave a nod. Thank you, Shisui. Naruto abruptly said, well, nudging Hinata slightly. Now that you two's acquainted, Missy here needs to get dressed so we can head to the rain. Hinata pushed out of his hand and began to back away. What? I still have business to take care of outside the village, and you'd be safer back at home, understand? But I can't risk Danzo knowing anything new, so Nagato's going to have to safeguard your mind like he has mine. Hinata gave a fierce shake of her head. Nagato as in pain. He started all of this, he hurt you, I can't? In an attempt to calm her, he gently grasped her face. It's alright Hinata. He's nothing like the masked man. There's no reason to feel afraid or offended. But he still is the cause of this mess and he was going to kill you. Things have changed. Besides, 1, if he wanted to kill me he would have blown my brains out already, and 2, this all would have happened regardless. One way or another. The world needs to be put into balance. The Shinobi, the Biju. It has to happen and I can't fight this fight with you in danger any more than you already are, okay? Hinata accompanied him and Shisui to the hidden rain as a result of this and a few other arguments. The rain was a world entirely different from the one she was familiar with, where the rain fell almost continuously and towers rose out of the ground in icy steel hues. But the damage it had caused was even more shocking in a terrible way. It had almost been destroyed, just like Konoha, but it was being restored, just like her cherished home. Naruto gestured toward the tallest tower, which was being worked on. A figure was waiting for them atop a massive statue. Welcome to the rain. A large room that must have been used for training was thrust upon him. It was scratched and occasionally strewn with equipment. Naruto felt compelled to speak once more when Neji locked the door behind them. But first, Neji wanted to make his point, and with great pain as Naruto was flung against the wall across from him after being struck in the chest with a strong blow. Neji hadn't held back either. He could almost see the chakra whizzing at his fingertips. Even as he calmly stepped back and waited for Naruto to rise again. With considerable effort, Naruto moaned, trying to ignore the potentially harmful throbbing. He fortunately recovered quickly. Neji, he said abrasively. I don't want to fight you, just fought the Sharingan and don't need to add the Byakugan to the list the same day. Okay. Let's talk about this. Talk about it, sneered Neji. You wish to talk? Neji hit Naruto again, but this time he was pushed against the wall and held there. It's much too late to talk. You already went past that with the first actions. He dodged Neji's next intended blow and yelled, I know I did, out loud. Neji's eyes narrowed. And maybe I shouldn't have gone so far so fast, but I don't regret it. I said the wrong thing. When Naruto was unable to block it, Neji whipped his other hand and slammed his palm into his thigh. He gritted his teeth and fell to the ground once more. It wouldn't have hurt to just strike. But a Hyuga's? He was unable to determine which was worse. Sakura's punches, which were full of chakra, or the Hyuga's incredibly precise blows when their Byakugan was in use. Sakura could cause excruciating pain, but they were incapacitating, and he had trouble moving his leg. Take care of it, Kurama. You have to fight back, but I'm already on it. No, not now. He stood back up and assumed a stance as soon as his leg was fully functional again. Not as offensive as one might anticipate from him, however, in defense. I'm not gonna fight you, Neji. She wouldn't want us to, and I know there's things I have to say that deep down you agree with. In all honesty, he had no desire to engage in combat with Neji, no longer. Neji, regrettably, had a different wish. How one feels doesn't amount to anything in this type of situation. This isn't just about what you did with Hinata, it's about what you've done with our clan. Do you have any idea the trouble this will cause for all of us, especially her? Neji's next blow was swatted away by him. He yelled, I know, and jumped back to dodge another. And I hate that something so simple is causing an avalanche, and it shouldn't be that way. But I'm not backing down, and neither is Hinata. Who are you to say what she will or won't? I'm her spouse, her family. You are not. Whatever sham you put her through is nowhere substantial to even consider such an idea. What you are, is trouble. I always knew you were, but this is a whole new level you've gone. Dreams of being Hokage is one thing. Directly interfering with this clan's destiny is another. The words, destiny, and sham, caused his anger to flare up. He refused to slap Neji for it. However, he would ensure that it passed through his thick skull. Then he growled, you mean fate. He pushed himself forward and collided with Neji, sending him under him and backward into the ground. He held up his hand as though to punch, but Neji twisted his face to absorb the blow. Instead, Naruto swung his hand and tore off Neji's headband. As it flew through the air, Neji's forehead's permanent seal scar became visible. The Hyuga's eyes grew wide as it did. Naruto hissed, "We already had this talk." Neji twisted to try to knock Naruto down, but Naruto grabbed him tightly, allowing Kurama's chakra to make his grip stronger. Neji stumbled in shock. The Kyubis, he disregarded him. Pointing to the mark, Naruto yelled angrily, "Do you want her, one of her future kids or anyone in this family, to have to be branded like a freaking animal?" He was trembling with rage when something strange occurred. To be literally labeled as less important, and to suffer for it. His cheek was wet with tears. To feel like they have to cover it up? Huh? You want more to live like you have to? Huh, Neji? His hold tightened, and now almost his whole body trembled. All Neji could do was lie there, unable to speak. "Do you want it to continue? I will never forget what you told me about that day we fought. About your dad. And how can you support it? Does that stupid branded seal force you to? Huh? Can you really not fight it? Or is it that it makes you too afraid to? Too afraid that if you do you'll die for it like a freaking slave, no worse. A misbehaving dog that needs put down. Tell me, Neji," he shaken him. "It doesn't even have to be me. It could have been anyone she had fallen for outside the clan. But yet those stupid traditions would have caused her and her kids such pain. Or even anyone else in this family. As future Hokage, I refuse to allow your clan, your family, to do that to their own people. Heck, I don't even see how such a thing even began. And to top it, people should have the right to love outside the clan's walls." After making his point, he released Neji and slid to the side while dabbing at his eyes. He cleared them and turned back to Neji, saying, "No one else is getting marked under my watch. No one. And I swear, on my life, she will have a chance at a free life. I want to make her happy. I want her to feel love the same way she made me feel the night she confessed. I've given her my heart once. I'll do it again if I have to. You won't regret breaking free of it, I swear." Then he chuckled. "And even if you and your father don't give me your blessings, that's not gonna stop me, you know that." With a faint smile on his lips, Neji shook his head. "But, I don't want it to be that way. I want family.in. Laws. So please, let me talk to the father." Neji sighed deeply and stood up instantly. In an apologetic gesture, Naruto returned his band to him. "Neji, you know I'm right. Just help me out here, okay?" Neji slid it back on, covering the seal on his forehead, and there was a gentle ruffle. Then he turned away from Naruto. "She is in her room. You may speak with her and join us for a private brunch at noon." With a tired laugh, Naruto laughed. "Thank you, Neji. You have no idea what that means to us." Neji grinned. "Don't get too cocky. You're still in trouble with the village, and, if you ever hurt her again." There was no need for words, it was obvious. After giving a nod and changing, Naruto crept out to locate Hinata. Surrounded by splendors, Naruto was once again made excessively aware of himself, as had been the norm lately. The current head of the Hyuga clan was seated in front of a number of exquisite, richly laden plates that had been prepared for the meal. He had a certain air of royalty. Naruto was more frightened sitting in front of him than in front of any of his adversaries, though he was unable to explain why. With them, he appeared to be able to be more relaxed. There was always a sense of unease with Hiyashi. He smiled inwardly, thankful for the pale fingers that grabbed his own from beneath the table. "Father," she uttered. Hinata was stunning. She was wearing a kimono, and she was flattered by her unstyled hair. Naturally, he had managed to privately comment on this to her beforehand out of shyness. Man, compared to the Hyugas, he must be a pauper, particularly because his ancestry wasn't widely known. He and a few others were aware that he was the son of the fourth Hokage, but to most of the villagers, he was just a mischievous orphan with no history. The fact that he had previously been a brat who caused trouble for attention didn't help either. He cast a sidelong glance. He thought the younger girl was Hinata's younger sister because she kept smiling at him and Hinata in a playful way. Unlike her sister and father, she appeared to be quite outspoken in her manner. He finally plucked up the courage to speak to their father directly as the meal got underway. "I promised my hand to her," he said, making every effort to speak politely. "I apologize for not asking your permission first." The younger girl giggled, but he ignored it. With a straight posture and a tired voice, the man put down his chopsticks and folded his hands together. "You would have been denied. You still are, do you understand, child?" Hinata's fingers gripped him more tightly. His hands were shaking so much that it wasn't her that was uneasy. She nudged him tenderly. She seemed to be saying, "Go on." How strange that she was supporting him this time. "I have a lot of respect for your clan, sir, but as someone who will become future Hokage, I can't condone some of your traditions." Hiyashi looked down. "Pardon me for bringing this up, but after what happened to your brother, I would think you would have realized the need for adjustments." Naruto detested revisiting the incident. The first time must have been horrifying enough. How his own brother was killed for his sake after being born a few seconds later and thus labeled as a member of the branch. How he had only found freedom in death, but in the process, he had left his brother and young son scarred. Perhaps remembering it, Hiyashi closed his eyes, and Naruto sensed the sadness radiating from him. Naturally, this man had direct knowledge of the repercussions of his clan. Naruto hoped he was different from the obstinate elders. And I'm not doing this as some political agenda to get a Hyuga as a Hokage's wife. I'm doing this for both her and my own desires. It just so happens the act is breaking the Hyuga's traditions in the process. That it is. She will face disgrace among the elders for being with the likes of an outsider. They're not the head though. The man gave a grim smile. You are so ignorant of politics. He grinned back. He then turned serious and said, I admit, I very much am, but since when did doing what's right mean making hard-headed geezers happy? Hiyashi gave a headshake. A Hyuga cannot join with someone outside the clan. You will have to let it go. Listen to me, sir. Do you want her future children or your youngest to go through what you and your brother have? On my life, I'll fight it away. I will never allow a child to be branded with that seal again. And it doesn't even have to be mine. I'll still fight even if we aren't together, so I'm not going away. But, she did choose me. Not sure how it happened, but it did. Once more, Hiyashi shook his head. He looked at his youngest daughter first, then his oldest. You do not realize how many nights I have reflected the state of our clan. Of her future as the heiress. He said. How she was never happy here until a short time ago, when she was with you. I admit I've been a bad father in the past, but no more. I came to realize she seemed to come back with strength each time she left the estate devastated. And it was from you. I see the power you have over hearts. And I do want it for this clan. So why not just let me? It is not that simple. After what you've done in the past, bringing our small unit together again, saving her life from the Akatsuki. I see great hope in you for the future. But, you currently have a rogue status and as the Hyuga's head, I can't ignore it. But, Hinata has already explained your predicament, but I can't allow someone with such a status even near the estate. Next time you step foot here, I'll have to alert the authorities. Then I'll clear myself. And restore the village. And after you have? You just steal her away again?
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.